Chapter 104. Because they had to take care of Song Tao Tao, the carriage traveled slowly, taking more time than when they came. By the time they reached the Liangzhou garrison, it was already evening. Shen Han and his group were already waiting on the horse path outside the garrison. When the carriage stopped and Shen Han saw Xiao Ju alight, he let out a sigh of relief. On this trip to Liangzhou city, they did not receive any letters about what Xiao Ju was doing there. Over the past few days, they had been worried that the situation would change. Now it seemed that the matter had been resolved smoothly. Shen Han was about to speak when he heard Liang Ping say, Why is there a girl here? Girl? A 15 or 16-year-old girl in a pink dress jumped down from the carriage in front. She was delicate and cute, with a face as beautiful as the moon. Looking at He Yan, who was yawning weakly, Shen Han was shocked. The governor had gone to Liangzhou and brought back a girl. Was he trying to draw a line between himself and He Yan? But doing this in front of He Yan was too heartless. As he was thinking, he heard the happy voice of a young man behind him, Uncle, big brother, you're finally back. The one who jumped over like a rabbit was Qing Li Su. Beside him was the beautiful female Dr. Shen Muxue, dressed in white. Qing Li Su came over and said to Shen Han with dissatisfaction, Shen Jiaodo, why didn't you tell me that uncle was back? If I didn't hear it myself, I wouldn't have been able to welcome uncle back. Big brother, I see that you've returned safely. This trip should have been very smooth. That guy Yuan Baozhen left, right? I knew you could do it, huh? His originally happy expression shattered when he saw Song Tao Tao. His tone instantly became ear-piercing. He jumped up and pointed at Song Tao Tao, asking, Second Miss Song, why is she here? What's with that expression? Song Tao Tao frowned. We met Miss Song in Liangzhou city. He Yan smiled and said, it was also a coincidence. Miss Song will be staying at the city guards for a period of time. She did not go into detail about how she met Song Tao Tao and covered it up for Song Tao Tao. Big brother. Qing Li Su looked at him in disbelief. I asked you to help me hide from Yuan Baozhen so that he won't capture me and bring me back to get married. Yet you brought her to me directly. You're making me suffer. Qing Li Su. Song Tao Tao couldn't take it anymore. She stood up with her hands on her hips and shouted back at him fiercely, Do you think I want to see you? To be honest, I came to Liangzhou city because I was running away from my marriage. If I hadn't met second young master Xiao, I wouldn't have come here. You don't want to marry me, but I don't like you. A useless young master wants to be a match for me. I think you're dreaming of marrying Shi Shi, wishful thinking. In terms of eloquence, Qing Li Su was no match for Song Tao Tao. At this moment, she regretted that she didn't read more books. She didn't even know how to scold someone. You shrew. Qing Li Su said weakly. At least I'm better than a useless person like you. Song Tao Tao rolled her eyes at him. The two of them started to quarrel. Liang Ping had no choice but to mediate. Young Master Cheng, the governor, and the others have been on the road for half a day. They must be tired. Let them go back and rest for a while. We'll talk again after they eat, okay? Since someone was giving him a way out, Qing Li Su naturally had to accept it. She said, I won't argue with you. My heart aches for my uncle and big brother. Finally, the situation before them was alleviated for the time being. Shen Muxue, who had been silent all this time, walked up to Xiao Ju and said, Second young master, in the secret letter that was sent back, it said that someone was injured. These people all looked normal. Xiao Ju glanced at He Yan. He Yan said, It's me. Shen Muxue asked. Do you feel any discomfort? It's just some superficial wounds. He Yan smiled and said, I'll have to trouble Miss Shen to help me find some ointment for external injuries. The ointment from last time is very good. Song Tao Tao looked at him in surprise. Young master you're injured. When she didn't see He Yan get injured, she thought nothing had happened. Qing Li Su pulled He Yan away and stared at Song Tao Tao as if she was a thief. Shrew, stay away from my big brother. The two of them started to quarrel again. He Yan was speechless. The energy of a young man was really enviable. When they returned to the garrison, they rested for a while. By the time they finished eating, the sky was already dark. Shenhan said to Xiao Ju, I've cleaned the governor's room every day. Today, I've changed the bedding for him. He can stay here as long as he wants. Xiao Ju's love for cleanliness had almost reached the point of paranoia, so Shenhan had already made thorough preparations. Xiao Ju nodded and was about to walk in when He Yan tugged on his sleeve. Wait. Was he going to whisper to him? Shenhan pondered in his heart. As an outsider, he shouldn't be involved in such a situation. He said, Governor, if there's nothing else, I'll take my leave. He didn't wait for Xiao Ju to reply and left in a hurry. He Yan pushed Xiao Ju into the room. Xiao Ju said coldly, What's the matter? Governor, have you forgotten what you promised me? You're the General Feng Yun. You have to keep your word. What did I say? Xiao Ju looked at her calmly. He Yan was anxious. Didn't we agree before we came back that you would arrange a new room for me? I don't want to stay in a shared room. Otherwise, it'll be inconvenient for me to bathe and change my dressing. Before Xiao Ju could reply, another voice sounded. Isn't it just a change of room? Why would you need it? I can help you too. The two of them turned around and saw Qing Lisu running over. Qing Lisu and Xiao Ju's rooms were right next to each other. There was a door in the middle that divided the mansion into two rooms. Usually, Qing Lisu was forced to copy books. When Xiao Ju was reading, she would look at him. Therefore, the door wasn't closed. At this moment, Qing Lisu ran over from his room. She was too friendly. Big brother, what do you think of my room? He Yan, If you think my room is good, I'll change rooms with you. Young Master Qing couldn't wait. We'll move out tonight. I'll go pack my luggage now. Big brother, what do you think? He Yan was a little confused. Xiao Ju frowned and looked at her nephew who was used to being different from other people. She asked, What the hell are you doing? Uncle, Qing Lisu said with a sad face. Who told you to bring that shrew back? I just asked Liang Jiaodo. Song Tao Tao is temporarily living with Dr. Shen. She's just a few steps away from us. If I live here, won't I have to see her every day? I feel dizzy whenever I see her. It's better if I don't. Since Big Brother also wants to change rooms, I'll change rooms with Big Brother. When Song Tao Tao leaves, we'll change rooms back. He Yan, okay. Xiao Ju, no. Qing Lisu's dislike of Song Tao Tao exceeded his respect for his uncle. He pretended not to hear Xiao Ju's words and happily went back to pack his things. Xiao Ju said angrily, Come back here. She reached out to drag him back, but He Yan blocked her. Qing Lisu took the opportunity to run away. With a bang, he closed the door. Xiao Ju, Qing Lisu. Be careful not to scare the child if you're so fierce. He Yan looked at him with a smile. Governor, young Master Cheng has already agreed. It's a matter of mutual consent. How can you interfere here? His words made it sound like Xiao Ju was an unreasonable person who wanted to break up an affectionate couple. Xiao Ju sneered. What right do you have? Because I am only one red mole away from being the woman you love deeply. He Yan looked at him with a smile. The room suddenly fell silent. Xiao Ju looked away in disdain. Lady He, do you really want to stay in the Liang Province Guards? I've never lied about this. He Yan stopped smiling and said seriously, Not only that, I really want to join the 9 Flags Battalion. Don't push your luck. I always stop when I'm ahead. He Yan said, Commander-in-Chief, I just need a chance to prove myself. I need to prove that I'm not a bad person and that I'm worthy of being your confidant. Xiao Ju sneered. You're talking big. You won't even give me a chance. Aren't you being arbitrary? You? Xiao Zhu sized her up and said calmly, how long can you last in the Liang province guards? Longer than you think. You're a woman. I won't be discovered. I won't cover for you. Hearing this, He Yan smiled. That's what you want to say, right? Second young master Xiao was noble, aloof, and unreasonable. It was impossible for him to cover up the truth for her just because of her words. However, He Yan's skills were outstanding. Xiao Zhu hesitated if he really wanted to give up. After all, in Xiao Zhu's opinion, it didn't matter whether one was a man or a woman. What mattered was whether one was capable enough, outstanding enough, and worth staying. If you can't do it, you'll leave. His answer was as heartless as ever. It's a deal, He Yan said. I'll stay here with my own ability. Whether I enter the 9 Flags Battalion or perform meritorious deeds, I promise I won't let you worry. Xiao Zhu stared at her. After a while, he raised his eyebrows and asked, you really want to enter the 9 Flags Battalion? Of course. Okay. Second young master Xiao smiled. I'll give you a month to recover. After a month, your daily martial training will be the same as the 9 Flags Battalions. As if he was afraid He Yan didn't understand, he added, the 9 Flags Battalion's martial training will be 3 times more than yours. He Yan, Xiao Zhu, what a heartless man. If you can take it, stay. If you can't, get out of the Yangzhou guards. He stared at He Yan with a faint smile. His clear eyes were deep and there was a hint of mockery in them. Lady He, how long can you take it? He Yan replied to him with a gritted teeth smile. Commander, there's still a long way to go. Just wait and see. Finally, the house was settled. He Yan also had to go back to the shared bunk room to pack up his things and meet up with his brothers. When she arrived at the bunk room, before she could enter, Xiao Mai, who was leaning against the door far away, noticed her and shouted, Gu, you're back. Whoa, her shout attracted the attention of everyone inside. Instantly, everyone poked their heads out of the room. The bolder ones squeezed to He Yan's side and asked, He Yan, you came back with Military Governor Xiao. How was it? Did you gain anything from your trip? Was it fun in Liangzhou City? Where did you guys go? Go, go, go. Don't crowd around here. Hong Shan chased them away and let He Yan into the room. You came back just in time. Everyone's here. I was just wondering why they weren't here yet. You seem to have lost some weight. You didn't lose anything, right? No. He Yan said as he stepped into the room. He found that it was quite lively. Wang Ba, Jiang Jiao, and Huang Xiong were all there. Jiang Jiao said, we heard that Military Governor Xiao came back. We thought you would arrive soon, so we waited for you here. He Yan sat down on the couch inside. It's good to be back. The Sun family's bed was soft and fluffy, but when he thought about the many girls buried in the courtyard, he felt that it was particularly eerie and terrifying. Although the bedboard was hard and the blankets were thin, his heart was bright and he could sleep soundly. Did your relationship with Military Governor Xiao improve? Huang Xiong asked. Previously, because the Vanguard Battalion had selected Huang Xiong, He Yan resented Xiao Zhu. This time, when he went to Liangzhou City with Xiao Zhu, Hong Shan and the others were afraid that He Yan wouldn't be able to hold back and fight with Xiao Zhu midway. It's okay, He Yan said vaguely. Wang Ba sneered and said gloatingly, he doesn't look like much. If he's really good, why did he come back empty-handed? Why didn't he give him anything? As they were talking, Qing Lisu, who was dragging 3 large suitcases, arrived. She stood at the door and asked He Yan, Gu, can I come in? Come in. As soon as Qing Lisu entered, she was shocked by the room full of people. She said, it's so lively. Won't it be noisy when you sleep at night? Xiao Mai's eyes widened. What's the meaning of this? He Yan smiled and said slowly, I made a great contribution on this trip to Liangzhou. The governor appreciates me very much and has decided to let me and young Master Cheng exchange rooms. Young Master Cheng will live here and I will live next to the governor as a reward. Everyone was stunned. Is this kid telling the truth? Wang Ba asked Cheng Lisu. It's true. Cheng Lisu cupped her hands respectfully to the others. In the future, please take care of me. The room was like boiling water. Instantly, it became lively. Everyone asked He Yen at the same time. What contribution did you make? What did you do? Just changing rooms? Didn't you give any other rewards? Didn't you enter the Vanguard Battalion? He Yen, are you going to be promoted? If you get promoted, can you lead the brothers? He Yen was surrounded like a general who had won a battle. On the other side, Shen Han had just learned about Xiao Ju's journey to Liangzhou. Sun Xiangfu has been in Liangzhou for 8 years. The people have no way to make a living. Shen Han sighed. You reap what you sow, he deserves this outcome. He had been in Liangzhou for a few years and had heard of the misdeeds of Sun Xiangfu and his son. However, he was not an imperial censor, nor did he have Xiao Ju's remarkable abilities. He could only swallow his anger. Today, Xiao Ju had uprooted Sun Xiangfu and his son, and caused Yuan Baozhen to suffer without being able to say anything. It was truly gratifying. Governor, on this trip to Liangzhou, have you investigated He Yen's background? Shen Han hesitated for a moment, but still asked. He did not understand the current relationship between He Yen and Xiao Ju. If it was good, then Xiao Ju was clearly guarding against He Yen. If it was not good, then he had just received orders from Cheng Lisu that He Yen would live in Cheng Lisu's room in the future. Didn't that mean he would live next to Xiao Ju? If they were not close, how could they have reached this stage? Could it be that they had rekindled their old feelings? But looking at Xiao Ju's appearance, it did not seem like it. Shen Han had been a bachelor for many years, so he did not know anything about love. But he had heard of the saying that love was hard to break. Perhaps this was the case. You can say that, Xiao Ju said. Speaking of which, He Yan's family situation written in the military registry was not false. He did have a father who was a guard at the city gate. He had a brother who was about the same age, but the young girl was a girl. It was hard to believe. Is he one of us? Shen Han asked carefully. For the time being, there is no harm in treating him as one of us. Xiao Ju lowered her eyes. But there is no need to tell me everything. Shen Han had a rough idea of what was going on, so he said, I understand. I have something for you to do, he said. He Yen answered his brother's questions with difficulty. By the time he returned to his room, it was already night time. Xiao Ju did not like noise, so the place where she lived was rather quiet. When He Yen went in, he was still not used to it. He had suddenly changed from a bunk room with more than 10 people to a room that belonged to him. It made him feel as if he was dreaming. Cheng Lisu, a young master who was so particular, did not forget to light the incense in the room for him before he left. The light fragrance lingered at the tip of his nose, making him feel very relaxed. He Yen lay down on the bed and felt as if he was lying on a ball of cotton. He immediately felt drowsy. She thought that it was indeed extravagant and luxurious. It was not surprising to sleep on such a bed until late in the morning. She caught a glimpse of the middle door again. The middle door was covered by a bead curtain. When the curtain was lifted, the door was revealed. Behind the door was Xiao Ju's room. Xiao Ju was probably there to supervise Cheng Lisu's daily homework, but the door was currently closed. He Yen tried to push the door gently, but it did not budge. He did not give up and pushed it hard, but it still did not budge. Xiao Ju had actually locked the door from the other side. He Yen thought to himself that this was strictly guarded. Those who did not know would think that he was the girl and she was a rapist who would sneak into other people's rooms at night. Second young Master Xiao really could not tolerate even a little bit of sand entering his eyes. Was there a need for this? Second young Master Zhao's thoughts were really unpredictable. In the middle of the room, there was a large wooden tub filled with hot water. He Yen walked over and put his finger in to test the water. The temperature was just right. This was probably prepared by Shin Han. They were covered in dust from the journey today and needed a good bath. He Yen was very satisfied that he did not have to go to Wulu River to soak in cold water. He was about to take off his clothes when he suddenly thought of something and looked at the middle door. He almost forgot that there was a door here. There were locks on both sides of the middle door. No matter which side was locked, the other side could not be opened unless both sides were opened at the same time. Since Xiao Ju had locked his side, He Yen had to lock his side as well. Otherwise, if Xiao Ju suddenly wanted to come over in the middle of the bath, wouldn't she be completely exposed? Although the consequences of doing so would most likely be that second young master Xiao would feel that she had stained his noble eyes and leave in a huff. He Yen locked the middle door before continuing to bathe and change. After changing, she took out the water from the wooden tub and poured it out. Finally, she returned to the room and sat on the bed. Shen Mushue had already brought the medicine for bandaging her wounds and placed it on the small table beside the bed. Because of the previous time when he said that, pure as ice and jade is only for his fiancée, he did not even bother to help her apply the medicine this time. He Yen looked in the mirror and unwrapped the cloth to change the medicine inside. Just as she was about to put on a new cloth, she saw a round jade box beside her. This round box was very small, smaller than a person's palm. She almost overlooked it. He Yen picked it up and saw the words "scar removal and muscle growth" written on it. He Yen was startled. After a moment, she shook her head and smiled. This girl was indeed meticulous. But this was too considerate. Shen Mushue was really kind. He was so considerate even to a lowly soldier. He was just an ordinary man. If he was injured, then so be it. He was not a businessman in the brothel. Why would he care about these things? He Yen should have thought the same. But just as she was about to put the box back, the image of that night suddenly appeared in front of her eyes. The red candlelight shed tears, the hibiscus curtain was warm, and that warm hand suddenly stiffened when it touched the scar on her back. She was still worried about how to deceive her husband with the lie she had made up, but the man in front of her nonchalantly blew out the candle and avoided the topic. He was still gentle, but she suddenly felt too ashamed to show her face. This was more hurtful than any words or gaze. The cold ointment was applied to the wound. It was a little painful and a little itchy. She asked herself in her heart, "Do you really not care?" It was not like that. She cared a lot. Even if she could do it all over again, she would not be able to let it go. He Yen rewrapped the cloth and put the jade box under her pillow. She turned off the light and lay down on the bed. This room was quiet and warm. There was no thunderous snoring from her brothers. There was also no leg that stretched across her body in the middle of the night. She should have fallen asleep immediately. She did not know why, but she felt a little confused and could not fall asleep. Perhaps, she should not have thought about the past. The next morning, He Yen woke up as usual. She was now living in the courtyard where Xiao Ju lived. She was far away from the rest of the soldiers and the martial arts arena. She had to go early. When she went to get the steamed buns and went to the martial arts arena, she met Shin Han, Liang Ping, and the other instructors. He Yen greeted them. Liang Ping looked at her high-spirited appearance and felt jealous. He was an instructor, but he was not promoted as quickly as a soldier. Look, how long had it been, and she was able to live next to the commander-in-chief. She just went out for a trip. How did the commander-in-chief see her in a different light? Shin Han had told them about Sun Xiangfu and his son. However, they did not know what kind of effort He Yen had made or what kind of contributions she had made. Liang Ping looked up to the sky and sighed. He also wanted to make a contribution. He wanted to be seen in a different light by the commander-in-chief. He wanted to live next to the commander-in-chief. He Yen, you came at the right time. I have something to tell you. Shin Han waved at her. He Yan ran over. Shen Han looked at her and said, "The commander-in-chief told me yesterday that you were injured and temporarily could not participate in some intense training. For example, equestrian and crossbow training, you can stop. When we are training these few days, you can find some training that is suitable for you." After a pause, he said, "But you can't be lazy. You have to come to the martial arts arena every day. You can't miss your morning run." "Understood," He Yan said. However, she thought that Xiao Ju was quite kind. Although her injury was superficial, it was at least on her back. If she continued to train like before, it would be difficult for her to recover. She was like this in her previous life. Before her old injury healed, she had to lead troops everywhere. Her injury was slow to heal, and her whole body was covered with stubborn old injuries. Although she later became a woman and was no longer as exposed to the wind and sun as before, her injury would still hurt faintly during the rainy season or the cold winter. It was difficult to heal. She could not endure it, but it would be best if she could not force herself to do so. She thanked Shen Han and went to the martial arts arena. Today, they were practicing saber techniques. He Yan had previously sparred with Huang Xiong on the martial arts arena. Everyone knew that her saber techniques were outstanding. She had a good temperament. Whenever someone asked, she would answer patiently with a smile. She was much more amiable than the black-faced instructor. Therefore, whenever the soldiers had any problems, they would always discuss it with her. He Yan was being tugged by a soldier to teach him how to use a knife. Suddenly, a crisp voice called out to him, "Big brother He." She turned around and saw that it was Song Tao Tao. In the Liang province guards, there was only one young girl, Shen Muxue. She was regarded as a fairy by the Liang province guards and no one dared to blaspheme her. Now, there was another one. She looked a bit younger than Shen Muxue. Although she was not as elegant and refined as Shen Muxue, she was more lovable and cute. She was like a small flower that bloomed in spring. Even her branches carried fragrant fragrances. Her hair was tied up in 2 buns. She lifted her skirt and ran to He Yan's side. She ignored the fiery gazes of the surrounding soldiers and only looked at He Yan. She asked, "Yesterday, I heard from Miss Shen that your injuries were not light. Are you feeling better?" He Yan, when they arrived at the Liang province guards, Song Tao Tao lived with Shen Muxue. Therefore, no one deliberately paid attention to her. Qi Wu and Fei Nu could not spend all day with a young girl and not do proper business. Therefore, they did not notice when this young girl came to the martial arts arena. She even saw He Yan at first glance. He Yan smiled and said, "Thank you for your concern, Miss Song. It's just a small injury." "How can this be considered a small injury?" Song Tao Tao tugged on his sleeve. "I'll bring you to Miss Shen to take a look." Needless to say, He Yan could also feel the mischievous expressions of the people around him. Liang Ping's face was about to turn green. What kind of public tugging and pulling was this? Liang Ping had lived for almost 30 years and was still single. Who was He Yan doing this for? However, he could not afford to offend second Miss Song. He could only glare angrily at He Yan and signal He Yan to quickly send Song Tao Tao away. He Yan was about to speak when he heard an angry shout, "Second Miss Song, what are you doing here?" He Yan felt a headache when he heard this voice. Qing Lisu was like a cat that smelled blood. She followed Song Tao Tao and came over. When she saw Song Tao Tao tugging on He Yan's sleeve, she was so angry that she immediately separated the two of them. She said angrily, "Don't come near my big brother He. My big brother He already has a fiancé." Song Tao Tao first looked at He Yan in surprise. Then, she looked at Qing Lisu, who was looking at her proudly. After thinking for a moment, she sneered, "So what if I'm your fiancé? You can break off the engagement. I'm still your fiancé. What's the point?" Qing Lisu looked like she was struck by lightning. She took a few steps back. The people around them were also dumbfounded. He Yan and Qing Lisu were sworn brothers. Song Taotao was Qing Lisu's fiancé. He Yan also had a marriage contract. However, Song Taotao treated He Yan differently. This was a shocking story with many twists and turns. If there was a hole at this moment, He Yan would crawl into it without looking back. She weakly defended herself. I'm not. I didn't. Chapter 105. Because of Song Taotao and Qing Lisu's appearance, the training field became a mess. He Yan had a headache. Under Liang Ping's gaze, he tried his best to persuade Song Taotao and Qing Lisu to leave. Although they left, she was left alone to face everyone's different gazes. Hong Shan touched He Yan's arm and asked in a low voice, "Is that young Master Cheng's fiancé?" He Yan nodded. Hong Shan looked at her with a complicated and admiring gaze. I underestimated you. He Yan. Don't think too much. However, it was clear that Hong Shan was not the only one who thought this way. When the training ended, all of the soldiers immediately gathered around her, all of them asking her what her relationship with Song Taotao was. There was even someone who said sourly, "Then let's congratulate young Master He in advance. It looks like before long, our Liang province guards will be able to produce a son-in-law for Sir Song. May I ask when young Master He is going to treat us to wedding candy?" He Yan, don't talk nonsense. How can you slander a girl's reputation with just your words? So what? That person said carelessly. I think second Miss Song is very satisfied with you. Jiang Jiao passed by from the other side and glanced at He Yan. His gaze was as sharp as a knife, as if he wanted to carve out a piece of flesh from her body. He snorted and left in a huff. He Yan was stunned and asked subconsciously, "What's wrong with Brother Jiang? I didn't provoke him, did I?" Jiang Jiao had always been arrogant, but he had a good temperament. Although he was older than He Yan, he was very humble every time he asked He Yan for advice on spear techniques. It was rare for him to give He Yan such a look. Wang Ba said disdainfully, "You cuckolded your brother. Who are you insulting? How can little Jiang give you such an attitude? Be more careful." He Yan, that was true. Jiang Jiao's fiancé had eloped with another man and died for love. He hated it the most in his life. When he looked at Qing Lisu, he thought of himself. He Yan was that bastard who stole another man's wife. Who did I cheat on? He Yan suddenly reacted. I didn't. Before she could finish, someone called her name from the other side. He Yan. Xiao He. Coach is calling me, He Yan said. I'll leave first. The one called He Yan was one of the 3 instructors who had competed with He Yan in equestrian archery, the old man called Ma Damei. The old man waved at her kindly. Xiao He, I heard that you were injured when you went to Liangzhou City with the governor. It's just a minor injury, He Yan said with a smile. You can't force yourself. You're still young. It won't be good if you get sick, Ma Damei said warmly. Go and eat first. After you're done, come here and find me. He Yan asked, Coach, what's the matter? Of course it's something good. Ma Damei was still very mysterious. You'll know when the time comes. He Yan couldn't figure out what was going on, so he went to eat first. The soldier in charge of the meal had received Shen Han's order and knew that He Yan was injured, so he gave him an extra steamed bun. He Yan ate it on the spot. Then, he followed Ma Damei's instructions and went to the training field. The weather was getting colder. It was late autumn, so the sky darkened early. When He Yan arrived at the training field, he saw more than 10 people standing there. They were all the instructors of the Liangzhou City Guards. Ma Damei waved at her. Hey! Xiao He, over here. He Yan walked forward. Du Mao and Liang Ping were also there. Liang Ping looked at him and asked in surprise, Why did you ask him to come? I heard from the chief instructor that Xiao He is injured. It's good to bring him along. Liang Ping, don't be so stingy. Ma Damei leaned closer to Liang Ping and whispered, I think the chief instructor takes good care of this kid. Maybe he'll be promoted faster than you and me. There's no harm in getting on his good side in the future. Liang Ping looked at the old man's shrewd sneaky smile and said angrily, what kind of person do you think I am? I don't know how to get on his good side. You don't, but I do. Ma Damei didn't want to bother with him. She walked past Liang Ping and put her arm around He Yan's shoulder. She smiled and said, young man, let's go. Go? He Yan asked curiously, where are we going? Why are there so many instructors here? Even though it's night training, there aren't many people. Are they planning to drink behind Xiao Ju's back? When He Yan was in the Fuyue army, the deputy chief instructor under him also often drank behind his back. However, He Yan was a little flattered that they were bringing a small soldier like him. Don't ask. Ma Damei smiled mysteriously again. You'll know when we get there. He Yan was confused, but he didn't want to refuse their kindness. He guessed that they were either going to play a game or drink, so he didn't refuse. If she was on good terms with these instructors, she might have more bargaining chips when Xiao Ju considered whether she could enter the Nine Flags Battalion in the future. Okay. She immediately agreed with a smile. This group of people did not ride horses, they walked up Mount Baiyue. This road was different from the one they had taken during the flag battle, it was a small path. The instructors were all in high spirits. Along the way, they talked about the recent training of the new recruits, which new recruits were the most outstanding, and whether they had enough firewood this year as winter arrived and it snowed in Liangzhou. He Yan was walking silently when he heard someone say, Instructor Du, your relative, Lei Ho, has been very impressive in the vanguard recently. When he heard this name, He Yan's ears immediately perked up. After the battle for the flag that day, Xiao Ju selected Lei Ho to enter the vanguard. Other than that, there were also the other outstanding recruits from Mount Baiyue. Adding the people from the Liangzhou guards, there were a total of 1,000 people. Even though He Yan was dissatisfied, he quickly followed Xiao Ju to Liangzhou city. When he came back, he found out that the training of the vanguard had already started for a while. However, what made her feel strange was that the training of the new recruits in the vanguard was the same as what she knew. It was still a surprise attack. It wasn't the 3 times the amount of training that Xiao Ju had mentioned. He Yan had a guess. Maybe the recruits that Xiao Ju chose to enter the Nine Flags Battalion and the recruits that entered the vanguard were 2 different things. But she couldn't directly ask Xiao Ju about this matter. Therefore, she continued to pay attention to the movements on the other side. You flatter me. Du Mao was a bit proud when he heard that his relative was praised. When I saw him that year, this kid had just learned how to walk. He hugged my saber and wouldn't let go. Now that he's this big, he's a bit like me when I was young. Ha! Do you have any shame? Liang Ping looked askance at him. As if we didn't see what you were like when you were young. AI, you're wrong. Another instructor said. Now that Lei Ho has entered the vanguard and is so outstanding, his future is limitless. I think that in the future it won't be difficult for him to earn merits. Even though our old Du can't do it, but his nephew can. He's not bad. Go to your mother. Du Mao laughed. Probably because He Yan's gaze towards the other side was too obvious, Ma Damei who was walking beside her noticed it. She thought that He Yan was angry that she didn't enter the vanguard and said, Young man, the road ahead is long. Even though you didn't enter the vanguard, you may not be worse than Lei Ho in the future. Look further, don't be constrained by what's in front of you. He Yan turned her head. Just as she was about to say something, the old man patted her shoulder. Look, we're here. There was still some distance from here to the mountainside. The white sand and green bamboo, the moonlight was like snow. Niao niao steam rose between the cover of the forest. It was warm but light, like white ink, as if one was in a painting. How is it? Ma Damei chuckled. I didn't lie to you, right? There's a hot spring here. He Yan muttered. Liang Ping looked at her and snorted. If you weren't injured, I wouldn't have brought you here. Wait, He Yan's face was vigilant. You brought me here, it can't be that you want me to soak in a hot spring, right? Of course. Beside them, a slightly cultured instructor heard this and recited a poem in a genteel manner. Once the lovesick wish is fulfilled, money calls the water sentimental, steaming before the bath day, steaming heat waves arise. My whole body feels limp, dispelling illness is miraculous, I don't admire the birds of the heavenly lake, I'm willing to be a person in a hot spring. Warm water cures illness, this is good stuff. That's right, Madame, I said. Since you're injured, soak in the hot spring, it'll be good for you. He Yan awkwardly took a step back. No. I didn't bring clean clothes, forget it. It's okay, I brought an extra one. You can wear it, Du Mao said. It's been washed, it's not dirty. I'm afraid of water. He Yan continued to take a step back. The pool only reaches your chest when you stand up. We're just watching, what's there to be afraid of? Liang Ping was impatient. I. He Yan racked her brains to come up with a reasonable excuse. Suddenly, the back of her head bumped into someone. She turned around and saw that it was Xiao Ju. The young man was wearing a dark green brocade robe with cloud embroidery. His moonlight hair was as black as ink and was held up by a jade hairpin. He was elegant and handsome. He raised his eyebrows and looked at her. He was born with an outstanding appearance. Standing in the secluded scenery, his clothes were like clear snow. Autumn moon dust could not be offended. He Yan said, Commander-in-Chief. Commander-in-Chief. Du Mao and the others shouted. Commander-in-Chief is also here to soak in the hot spring. He Yan was shocked. Xiao Ju was actually soaking in the hot spring with these instructors. The scene was hard to imagine. Xiao Ju pulled her to the side and reached out to pat the spot she had touched. She looked very disgusted. He Yan heard Madame explain, there are 2 hot springs here. They're not far from each other. The smaller one is usually used by the Commander-in-Chief. The bigger one is for us to soak in. Has the Commander-in-Chief finished soaking in the hot spring? Du Mao asked. Xiao Ju nodded. That's right. Then I'll go soak in the hot spring. He Yan said hurriedly. As soon as she finished speaking, she saw the instructors looking at her in unison. I mean, since the Commander-in-Chief has already soaked in the hot spring, that hot spring is smaller. I'll soak in it myself. Anyway, it's a waste to do nothing, Liang Ping, Xiao Ju said calmly. Yes. Liang Ping scolded. He Yan, is the Commander-in-Chief's hot spring something you can touch? Hurry up and come over. Why aren't you afraid of the water now? Aren't you afraid that you'll drown in there and no one will find out? This was back to the original topic. He Yan turned his back to the instructors and turned to Xiao Ju. He whispered anxiously, tell me. Xiao Ju crossed her arms in front of her chest and looked calmly at the anxious Xiao Ju. She said slowly, I said that I won't help you cover it up. Then I didn't know that they would bring me to the hot spring. He Yan was furious. If this continues, I'll have to fight with them to get out of here. Oh, Xiao Ju nodded with interest. Then you can have a good fight. He turned to leave. He Yan gritted her teeth and said, aren't you afraid that I'll tell them about the red mole on your waist? In the end, she felt that her words were powerless. Xiao Ju was not really threatened by her words. Sure enough, this person only laughed. Do as you wish. Xiao Ju. The young man's eyebrows were handsome and his eyes were like ripples in the autumn water. He seemed to be smiling coldly, but the words he said were not gentle at all. Instead, they were cold and mocking. Liar, he said. If you're discovered, what will you do? After saying this, he no longer paid any attention to He Yan and turned around to leave. Xiao. Before He Yan could finish, someone grabbed her arm. It was Liang Ping, who could not stand it anymore. He said angrily, "Why are you dawdling? Don't push your luck. It's good enough that I brought you to the hot spring. There are tens of thousands of new soldiers in the city guard station, and you still want to go to the governor's place? You're too bold." He Yan struggled and laughed. "I don't want to soak in the hot spring at all." Another hand grabbed his shoulder and said to the others, "This guy looks handsome. Why is he so unkempt? Just a little bit of water is enough to kill him." Ma Damii looked at her with a smile. "Young man, you haven't soaked in a hot spring before, right? Don't be afraid. Once you soak in it, you'll know the benefits." He Yan thought that this could not go on. It seemed that the only way was to fight with them and escape. After that, she could just make up an excuse to get away. Just as she was about to make a move, someone suddenly jumped behind her and kicked her. This kick was not very heavy, but because He Yan was being pulled by Liang Ping and Du Mao, her body was unbalanced. As a result, she was kicked into the hot spring. Plop! The people on the shore and in the water immediately burst into laughter. "Hey!" The culprit who kicked him stood by the water and laughed happily. "Little brother, I helped you. You don't have to thank me." He Yan popped her head out of the water and shook the water droplets off her forehead. She cursed in her heart. "Who wants to thank you?" When the rest of the people saw He Yan enter the water, they took off their clothes and entered the water. They were really magnanimous. He Yan was so shocked that she immediately turned her head. All she saw was white flesh. The spring water in the mountain was warm and light. It wrapped around her body and was very comfortable. However, He Yan was not in the mood to enjoy it. First of all, she was afraid of water now. Even though the spring water was not deep, her heart was still flustered. Second of all, it was easy to get in, but difficult to get out. Although the spring water was steaming and her body was submerged in the water, her identity as a woman would not be discovered for the time being. However, once she came out of the water, her clothes would stick to her body. As long as one was not blind, they would be able to see her. Moreover, this group of men was having fun playing in the water. Who knew if they would be kind later and make the situation even more difficult to deal with? The more one was afraid of something, the more likely it would happen. She stayed away from the crowd and soaked alone. She was noticed by everyone at a glance. The instructor who kicked her said, "Hey, why didn't you take off your clothes? Since you came down, don't you feel uncomfortable soaking in your clothes?" "No need." He Yan forced a smile and said, "I like to soak in my clothes." This hobby was a little unusual for ordinary people. The other instructors looked at each other. Someone stared at him and laughed. "Is this guy shy?" His words stirred up 1,000 waves. This time, the other instructors spoke openly. "No way. I don't think he's the type to be shy normally. I think it's possible. This guy is as delicate and pretty as a girl. Maybe he's like that in private too." "That won't do. How can a man of the Liang province guard be so shy? Why don't you call us over to train him today and fulfill our duties as instructors?" After saying that, several people swam towards He Yan. He Yan was shocked. "What do you want to do?" "Of course we're going to train new recruits." Du Mao laughed. "If we have to go to war in the future, won't you ruin our plans by being so unsociable? Was it necessary to go on the water like this?" He Yan turned around and swam. It would have been better if she did not swim. Once she swam, the other instructors seemed to find it interesting. One by one, the other instructors came over. In an instant, He Yan felt as if he had become the ball in the Kuja game. Everyone fought to be first and blocked him from all directions. In an instant, the hot spring became lively. If they were in a different place and situation, this scene could be considered harmonious. The usually serious instructors were laughing and joking. It was obvious that they treated her as one of their own and made fun of her. However, in this situation, He Yen could not bring himself to laugh. As she dodged their movements, she cursed in her heart. What kind of people were these? Was there something wrong with the instructors of the Liang Province Guard? In this situation, the only way to completely avoid them was to knock them all out. It would be fine if they were on the shore, but it was really difficult underwater. Moreover, there were so many of them that she had nowhere to hide. She swam with all her might, unaware that one of the instructors had grown up near the water and was familiar with the water. He had already dived into the water and quietly swam in front of her. He Yen was only paying attention to what was behind her. How could she see what was in front of her? Suddenly, a hand grabbed her arm from the water and she could not dodge in time. That instructor acted as if he had snatched the ball in the Kuja game. He even called out to his friends and shouted, "I caught her. Come quickly. Come quickly. Come quickly for what?" He Yen was shocked. However, she could not use her strength underwater and was unable to break free. She watched as Du Mao and the others swam closer and closer, looking as if they were going to take off her clothes. She could not help but break out in a cold sweat. She did not want her identity to be discovered here. At this critical moment, the hand that was holding her arms suddenly loosened, and the head instructor cried out, "Ouch!" Something that looked like a stone flew past the surface of the water and quickly sank to the bottom. At the same time, He Yen was lifted out of the water and landed on the shore. A cloak wrapped tightly around her neck. Everything happened too quickly. No one had time to react. After standing still, He Yen turned her head to look and said in surprise, "Commander-in-Chief?" It was actually Xiao Ju who had returned. He grabbed He Yen out of the water and wrapped He Yen into a cocoon. Other than He Yen, no one knew why. The instructors looked at him in confusion and looked at each other. "What are you doing?" At this time, another person's voice sounded. Shen Han walked out from the depths of the forest with clothes in his hands. He did not expect to see this scene. Looking at He Yan's wet hair standing beside Xiao Ju, the other instructors hiding in the water were dumbstruck. A bad premonition flashed through their hearts. Liang Ping said, "We are soaking in the hot spring." Shen Han was frightened. "He Yen, you also?" "He Yen." "Yes." Shen Han was shocked. Although men and men were different from men and women, Shen Han knew that people were possessive. He didn't even want to show his saber to other people because he didn't want them to think about it. This He Yen. His relationship with Xiao Ju was unclear, but it had been seen by someone, and someone else at that. How could Xiao Ju be happy about it? Something big happened. The instructors all gathered in a circle. They knew that Xiao Ju was a cold person, so they didn't dare to stand up naked. They all only stuck their heads above the water and stared at He Ju and Yen Liqiang. They wanted to ask something but didn't dare to. Their faces were filled with confusion. They were like a group of ducks waiting to be fed. He Yen thought of this and could not help but laugh out loud. Xiao Ju glanced at him and raised her eyebrows. "You can still laugh." He Yen immediately stopped talking. The instructors did not dare to speak. The situation was very awkward. As the chief instructor, Shen Han could not stand there and not speak. After hesitating for a long time, he asked, "Commander-in-Chief, are you going to take He Yen back?" "Ask her." "Ah," He Yen quickly said, "I'm good with the hot spring. It's enough. I want to go back." "I'll go back with you, Commander-in-Chief." "Oh, that's good, that's good." Shen Han did not know what to say. When he saw that He Yan's cloak was actually Xiao Ju's, he panicked and did not know where to look. He looked down at his shoes and said, "Commander-in-Chief, you and He Yen should go back and rest early. It's cold at night on the mountain." Although he did not understand why Shen Han suddenly became so frightened, He Yen was still very grateful for the way out. He smiled and said, "If that's the case, we won't stay any longer." After saying this, he turned around and wanted to leave. After taking 2 steps, he saw that Xiao Zhu did not move. He was stunned. Before he could say anything, he heard Xiao Zhu speak. He said, "Don't take her to the hot spring in the future." Shen Han's heart thumped. His mind was full of thoughts. It's over, it's over, it's over. At this time, there was still someone who did not know what was good for him. The instructor who had dived into the water and was good at swimming had a wet head. He gathered his courage and asked, Why? Isn't he injured? Isn't it better to soak in the hot spring? He Yen said in his heart, "Brother, I really have to thank you." You don't know, Xiao Zhu faced the crowd. He stood tall and graceful and curved his lips elegantly. His eyes were full of mockery. This recruit, before he entered the camp, he was already checked. He spat out 4 words from his thin lips. Every word made He Yen dizzy and dizzy. He has a hidden disease. He has a hidden disease. The man who asked the question did not notice and choked on a mouthful of water. He coughed violently. The atmosphere was even stiffer than before. What was even more unbearable was the way the instructors looked at He Yen. Their gazes were a mix of sympathy, surprise, and regret. Some of them even looked at He Yen's lower body. He Yen, although she had randomly made up an excuse when she was checking, she was only one person. When they set off, the checking physician would not be with them. Therefore, no one knew. Now, how was she going to get along with these instructors in the future? Xiao Zhu was deliberately making trouble for her. Was it because he was happy to see her in a difficult situation? What kind of fun was this? Actually, my condition is not that serious. She weakly defended herself. However, everyone believed military governor Zhao's words without a doubt. The only one who did not believe was Shen Han. Shen Han thought that Xiao Zhu was deliberately lying to protect He Yen from being provoked. It's okay, Liang Ping was originally a little jealous of He Yen. Now, it was all gone. What else could he be angry about? He even said enthusiastically, "It's not a big problem. You can slowly recover. I know a physician who specializes in this. Maybe in the future, you can still be saved." He Yen had nothing to say. He said, "Thank you, instructor. See you later." Then he ran away. Xiao Zhu said, "You guys can continue." Then she walked away unhurriedly. Shen Han stood at the edge of the hot spring in a daze. When everyone could no longer see Xiao Zhu's shadow, they gathered their courage and began to talk. Du Mao swam towards the edge of the hot spring and approached Shen Han's feet. He looked up and asked, "Chief Instructor, did you already know about it? I was wondering why you were so nice to this kid." So there was a reason. TSK, how did he get this disease at such a young age? Can it be cured? Cure my ass, Shen Han was furious. He kicked him back into the water and said, "I think you guys are tired of living. Cure your own brains first." The hot spring was left behind. In the dense forest, He Yen followed Xiao Zhu and walked towards the city center. The person beside her walked at a steady pace, just enough for her to keep up. He Yen squeezed out 2 words from between his teeth, "Thank you." "You look very reluctant." The corners of his mouth curled up slightly. "If you're not convinced, you can turn back." The cloak she was wearing belonged to Xiao Zhu. Moreover, if Xiao Zhu had not helped her, who knows what would have happened. Thinking of this, her complaints dissipated a little. She said, "Don't say that. I sincerely thank you, Chief." Xiao Zhu snorted, flattery. This person really couldn't listen to bad words, but he also couldn't listen to good words. He Yen paused and waved her fist at his back. Liar, he was speechless for a moment. "Don't you know that there are shadows under the moon?" He Yen paused and subconsciously looked down. Under the moonlight, her baring fangs and brandishing claws fell behind Xiao Zhu's shadow. It was like a funny shadow play. "I just saw a mosquito, so I helped you get rid of it." She lied without changing her expression. You don't have to thank me. When Xiao Zhu heard this, he laughed and continued to walk forward. The night was long and rogue. His back was leisurely and lazy, like a floating spring dream. He Yen saw that he was in a good mood and said, I just don't understand. Since you had already decided to help me, why did you wait until the last moment to help? If Xiao Zhu had helped her when she first arrived at the hot spring, he would not have had to turn back and waste the cloak, and she would not have fallen into the water and become a drowned rat. I'm teaching you a lesson. What? Xiao Zhu paused. Ma Damei asked you to go with her, so you went with her. You didn't even ask why you were going. Lady He, are you stupid or conceited to put yourself in such a situation? This was a lesson, but He Yen still did not understand. Then I already knew when I saw the hot spring. You didn't have to let me fall into the water and suffer, right? Only when you are forced into a desperate situation will you learn what a lesson is. He said calmly, you can't trust others. When you are in a desperate situation, you can only rely on yourself. So, try not to put yourself in danger. He Yen was speechless. Although what he said was not wrong, He Yen felt that this lesson was too radical. She muttered softly, who teaches people like this? She didn't know if Xiao Zhu heard her. But it didn't matter. He didn't turn back and continued to walk forward. Chapter 106. That night, He Yan's entire body was soaked. When he returned home, he once again fetched water to bathe in his room and changed into dry clothes before stopping. Xiao Zhu's cloak was wet. He Yan went to find Shenmuxue to find some pancreatic soap to wash it clean. He tied a rope to a tree outside the door and hung it properly. He planned to give it back to Shenmuxue when it was dry. It was a bit of a hassle, but the good intentions of the group of Liang Province Guard instructors were not completely wasted. When he woke up the next day, He Yen only felt that his entire body was free of worry. The morning was warm and comfortable. The hot springs could cure illnesses. It wasn't nonsense. She quickly climbed out of bed to freshen up and hurried up. When it was time to eat, she saw the people of the vanguard training their paces on the practice field. Lei Ho stood at the very front. The vanguard battalion and the normal recruits were already differentiated in terms of their clothing. The normal recruits only had 2 sets of clothing, one red and one black. In spring and summer, they wore unlined clothing. In autumn and winter, there was a thin layer of cotton sewn between the layers. Other than the belt, the clothing didn't have any other adornments. The cut wasn't very fitting. The large clothing would have the sleeves rolled up. For those who were slightly fatter like Hong Shan, the clothing would be stretched taut, as if it would tear apart at any moment. The people of the vanguard battalion wore dark blue riding uniforms. The fabric was much finer than theirs. It also seemed to fit them very well. This group of people were the 1,000 most outstanding people chosen from the Liang Province Guard. Each of them had an imposing appearance. Standing there, they made people feel intimidated. Lei Ho was born tall and outstanding. When he wore the riding uniform, it seemed as if it was tailor-made for him. Yesterday, he heard the instructors say that his performance in the vanguard battalion was also very outstanding. It was probably because of this that the instructors had him stand at the very front of the line. Thus, he was awe-inspiring and particularly eye-catching. He Yen was entranced by the sight. Suddenly, Hong Shan walked up behind him. Seeing this scene, he patted his shoulder. What's wrong? You don't feel good? No, He Yen said. I just feel that the clothing of the vanguard battalion is much better looking than our clothing. Not just clothes. Upon hearing this, Xiao Mai interrupted, I heard that they eat better than us. They get 2 more steamed buns and meat porridge every day. Alright, stop talking. Hong Shan interrupted Mai Mai's incessant chatter. Can't you see that your brother he is annoyed? He Yen, I'm not jealous of him. That's right. Xiao Mai was afraid that He Yen would be sad, so she added, he was defeated by A He Go. What's so great about him? He Yan smiled. Just as he was about to speak, Lei Ho seemed to have noticed their gazes and turned his head. When he saw He Yan, he was startled, but he quickly shifted his gaze and focused on training. This kid is pretty wild. Hong Shan sighed. Incredible. He Yan didn't make a sound. He continued to stand in place, watching Lei Ho train for a while. Only when Liang Ping urged them to hurry over did He Yan give up. Just as the instructors had said, Lei Ho's footwork was not bad. He was nimble and agile. He was indeed worthy of being a member of the vanguard battalion. However, He Yan still remembered that many days ago, during the battle for the flag on White Moon Mountain, she had fought with Lei Ho. At that time, the situation had been urgent. She had felt a trace of unnaturalness, but she couldn't think too much about it. Afterwards, she had thrown the matter to the back of her mind. Seeing Lei Ho today, it had brought back the memories of that day's fight. But she still couldn't think of a conclusion. What was unnatural about it? Liang Ping urged her fiercely. He Yan got up and went to the weapons rack to get her spear. She thought to herself, forget it. In any case, we're both in the Liang province guard. If it really doesn't work out, I'll find another opportunity to fight with Lei Ho in a few days. However, before He Yan could fight with Lei Ho, she received news that Xiao Ju was leaving. The Liang Province Guard received an urgent report that the citizens of Zhangtai City, which was thousands of li away from Liang Province, had been harassed by the Yudo. As soon as the Yudo arrived, they would steal money and food, and bully men and women. The Zhangtai County Magistrate was miserable beyond words. He could only ask Xiao Ju for help. He asked Xiao Ju to lead the troops to expel these Yudo. The Yudo country had bowed its head to the Dawei long before the previous emperor had been on the throne, paying tribute every year. However, ever since the current emperor ascended the throne, the Yudo had been restless. After the southern barbarian and western Chang rebellions had been quelled, the Yudo had also been quiet for a period of time. However, for some reason, they had become more aggressive and dared to directly harass the citizens at the border. The emperor was magnanimous and turned a blind eye to the Yudo's actions. In addition, there was Prime Minister Su's faction in the court that supported peace, so the other generals did not dare to take on this hot potato. It was probably because of this that the Zhangtai County Magistrate sought help from Xiao Ju in Liang Province. Commander-in-Chief, when are we leaving? The military instructors were all standing in Xiao Ju's room. He Yan was sitting at the spot where Cheng Lisu usually wrote. The door was not closed, so they did not avoid He Yan from talking about this matter. However, there was nothing to hide. It would take a month to travel to and from Zhangtai. If Xiao Ju was not there, it would be noticed. Tomorrow. So early? Liang Ping was surprised. But the army has not had time to tell the vanguard. No need, Xiao Ju said. I don't plan on bringing them. The instructors looked at each other, but He Yan was not surprised. Even though the new recruits of the Liang Province Guard had been training for more than half a year, they had never been on the battlefield. Rushing to Zhangtai after a long journey and then fighting with the Wutua people in Zhangtai was not the best plan. It would consume too much energy, and the Yudo was cunning and brutal. The new soldiers might not be a match for them. After thinking about it, Xiao Ju's Nanfu soldiers were the most suitable. If Xiao Ju brought the new soldiers to Liang Province, the Nanfu soldiers should be stationed somewhere else. With the military power in his hands, it was perfectly justifiable for him to lead the soldiers there. If he received good news, the emperor would be happy and reward him with something. She could also follow him and become an immortal. Thinking about this, he nodded secretly. He felt that Xiao Ju's decision was very good. He also told the military instructors what they needed to pay attention to in the coming days. When it was late at night, they all left. Xiao Ju stood up from the table and walked to the door. He reached out to lock the door. Unexpectedly, someone blocked him from behind. He Yan's head poked out from behind the door. What are you doing? He asked. He Yan did not let him close the door. He tilted his head and looked at him. Commander-in-Chief, are you leaving tomorrow? Xiao Ju ignored him and closed the door. He Yan's body was half stuck in the door. He could not close it, so he simply ignored it and walked into the room. He Yan easily crossed the door and entered his room. He followed behind him and asked politely, Commander-in-Chief, have you thought about bringing me with you to Zhangtai? You? Xiao Ju sneered. Why would I bring you? Do you think there are not enough people holding us back? In this person's eyes, perhaps everyone other than him was a burden. You are underestimating me. I can help you deal with the Yudo. Forget it. He looked her up and down and raised his eyebrows. A bodyguard can injure you, and you still want to talk about fighting the Yudo. Lady He, you are dreaming. Last time was a special situation. Ding Yi is not an ordinary person. He Yan defended himself, but he knew that Xiao Ju was right. Her injuries had not healed yet. These days, she was very careful even when she was training. She was afraid that it would affect her injuries. If she followed him to Zhangtai, she might cause trouble on the battlefield. Moreover, she couldn't use her expertise in arranging troops. In a troop, it was enough to have one main general. Okay. He Yan said with some regret. Suddenly, he thought of something and looked at Xiao Ju. Commander-in-Chief, it will take a month to go to Zhangtai and back. Plus, you will fight the Yudo. I am afraid that when you come back, it will be late winter. My wounds have mostly healed, so what else can I do for the next few days? Even if it is 3 times daily training, you won't deny it if I do it when you are not here, right? Or... She stared at Xiao Ju suspiciously. You want to use the battle in Zhangtai to escape? Don't tell me you don't want to go back to the Liang province guard. You want to leave me here alone? Xiao Ju stopped tidying up the books on the table and turned around. He Yan, who was looking up at her, was shocked. His eyes fell on He Yan's face. He lowered his head and said, First, I am not as bored as you. Second, you are not my fiancé. I don't want to leave you here alone. Third, I am not here. Isn't that what you want? What do you mean by what I want? He Yan said, Don't accuse me wrongly. He stared at He Yan with a faint smile. His dark eyes were deep. He asked, Oh. Then why are you asking so much? Is it important when I will come back or if I will come back? Of course it is important. He Yan blurted out, I will miss you. How could she not miss him? The more outstanding she was in front of Xiao Ju and won Xiao Ju's favor and trust, the faster and more aboveboard she could approach He Rufei as an equal. He was a living bodhisattva. How could she not miss him? Xiao Ju seemed to be surprised by her words. She turned her head and said, You really can say anything. Don't call me a liar. Other than my identity, I have never lied to you. What I said just now was true. Won't you miss me when we are apart? Xiao Ju said, No, I won't. He Yan said. We have been through life and death together. You don't have to be so heartless. Xiao Ju asked, Are you done? If you are, please go back to your room. I am going to lock the door. He grabbed He Yan's shoulder and pushed He Yan towards the door. Commander, sometimes I feel that our identities have been reversed. You are so guarded against me. It is as if you are the woman and I will sully your innocence. You talk too much. He Yan's legs were stuffed into her room. She knew that this person really did not want her to stay in the room. She took advantage of the fact that her upper body could still move and quickly took out a handful of things and stuffed them into Xiao Ju's hands. Bang! The door was slammed shut. He Yan said through the door, Although you are so heartless, I am still a righteous person. I have nothing to send you off to Zhangtai. Here, I will give you these. Eat them slowly on the way. I will wait for your good news at the guard station. Then, without waiting for a reply, he went to bed, blew out the lamp, and went to sleep. On the other side of the door, Xiaoju lowered her head and looked at her palm. It was a handful of sweet persimmon candy wrapped in a thin layer of pastry paper. Just by looking at it, she felt that it was fragrant and sweet. Song Taotao and Qingli were the same. Ever since they came to the Liang Province Guard Station, they would send small gifts every few days. She loved sweets, so she asked Qiwu to go to the city and buy a lot. She also gave some to He Yen thought that Xiaoju always carried the sachet of osmanthus candy with him when he was young. It was true that he loved sweets. Last time, he did not want to eat the candied haws that she bought for him. It was probably because she bought it from a street vendor in the city. Second young master Xiao did not want to eat these kinds of roadside snacks. However, this handful of sweet persimmon candy was made by Song Taotao and Qiwu at a proper restaurant. This should be able to please Xiaoju. He could not possibly refuse to eat this. That would be too picky. Hopefully, he would understand the principle of giving candy in return for a plum. He Yen woke up the next day and went to the practice field for day training. When it was almost noon and lunchtime, Qingli ran over. In order not to see Song Taotao, he had moved to the shared room that He Yen used to live in. Everyone thought that he would not be able to hold on for long. They did not think that he would be able to hold on until now. However, compared to the room he used to live in, it was much simpler. It was difficult for him to maintain his elegant appearance. His face had lost a lot of weight, and he had forgotten to match his hair band with his clothes. He panted as he ran in front of He Yen. He Yen was drinking wild vegetable soup and was almost knocked down by Qingli Su. He Yen asked, "What's the matter? Why are you in such a hurry?" "My uncle," Qingli said, "Big brother, my uncle has left." "I know. You know." Qingli was stunned. He then said angrily, "Then why didn't you tell me? If Xin Jiaodo did not tell me today, I would not have realized that he had already left." "He has already left?" He Yen was also slightly surprised. When she woke up in the morning, she did not pay attention to Xiaoju. She thought that Xiaoju would leave later. She did not expect him to leave so early. He probably did not want to disturb anyone else. Why did he not take Song Taotao with him when he left? Qingli began to complain. Who is he trying to make trouble for by staying in the Liang Province Guard? He Yen was speechless. Logically speaking, Song Taotao was such a delicate and cute little girl. Young men would be eager to please her. Qingli actually avoided her like a snake or scorpion. What kind of taste did this child have? She asked, "What did Song Taotao do to you?" "I think she is also sensible and well-behaved." "Big brother, please forgive me," Qingli said bitterly. "When I first found out about this marriage, I wanted to sneak a peek. Who knew that I would run into her? I don't know how she guessed my identity. She scolded me at the door." "Scolded you for what? What else could it be? You are not good at literature or martial arts. You are a good-for-nothing with no future." "That is fine. Everyone in Shuo City knows that I am incompetent. If it was just that, I would not be so angry. However, she later said that it is fine to marry me, but I must study hard at home and pass the imperial examinations. In the future, when I enter an official's career, I must strive to reach the top. If it is really difficult to study, I can also take the path of the military examination. In the end, I must be a hard-working person. How can there be such a vicious woman in this world?" Speaking of this matter, Qingli Su's resentment soared to the sky. "My beloved miss must also be like me, not fighting for other people's business, free and unrestrained, free from the dust of the world, enjoying wine together, making fun together, just like me. If I really get together with her, what is the difference between spending the rest of my life in prison? Therefore, big brother, don't say anything good about her. I am really scared and do not want to live that kind of life." He Yen did not know what to say even if he wanted to persuade him. Sometimes, when two people interacted, love at first sight was one thing, and not getting tired of each other was another. You hoped that he would be determined and hardworking, but he would yearn for the clouds and wild crane. They were not the same type of people, but they wanted to be together. Even if it was hard to notice at the time, time would tell. In her previous life, she did not understand the principles that she did not understand in her entire life. She was not as clear as the two children. If you really don't like her, then think of a way to cancel the engagement. You don't have to be so picky about her. Being friends is good enough. He Yen thought for a moment before speaking. Forget it, Qingli Su waved his hand, as if he did not want to talk about it. I really can't be friends with her. Our views are different. He Yen changed the topic and asked Qingli Su if he wanted to move to Xiao Ju's room since Xiao Ju had left. Qingli Su unexpectedly refused and only said that he wanted to be as far away from Song Tao Tao as possible. It was as if he was avoiding the plague. When the day's training ended, He Yen returned to his room. After washing up, he stared blankly at the locked door. Although Xiao Ju usually didn't talk to her much, she knew that he was just a door away from her. Once he left, he really felt that he was the only one in the huge room. It was very lonely. Suddenly, he missed the time when he lived with Xiao Mai and the others in the shared bunk. At that time, he would not feel bored listening to their idle conversations. If it was too quiet, he would not be able to sleep. If he could not sleep, it would be easy for his imagination to run wild. He Yen sat up from the couch and thought for a moment. He got up, put on his shoes, walked to the door, and took out a silver strand from his sleeve. This silver strand was from Qingli Su's hairpin. The hairpin was made into a yellow carp, and the silver strand was the carp's beard. It was very cute. The first time He Yen saw it, he touched it a little too hard and directly pulled the beard off. Qingli Su said that it was okay and that she could just throw it away. He Yen felt a little distressed and thought that he might be able to sell it for tea, so he put it away. At this time, she took out the curly silver strand and straightened it. She stretched it out through the crack of the door and put her ear on the door, listening carefully. This was a unique skill that a craftsman taught her when she was in the military camp. That craftsman was a locksmith. Sometimes, when a big family's ancestors or accidentally dug out a locked box, they would go to him to open it. He was quite famous in his hometown. Later, when the city captured strong men and conscripted them, the locksmith hid his children and grandchildren and did it himself. He Yen still remembered that the locksmith was a little old. When he smiled, he was missing an incisor, which was a little funny. He Yen and his grandson were about the same age, so He Yen hit it off with him. He even taught He Yen a few lock-picking moves. The locksmith had already died in the Battle of Mo County, but He Yen still remembered the lock-picking skills. That locksmith knew how to open the sh-shaped locks used by officials and nobles, and the G-shaped locks used for weddings and celebrations. However, he only taught He Yen the E-shaped locks used by commoners. He probably thought that one day, if he could return to his hometown and go back to his old profession, he could still make a living with his skills. He couldn't teach his disciple and starve his master. Who knew that in the end, he didn't succeed? He Yen tried to open the lock with a fluke. Fortunately, the door in Xiao Ju and Qingli Su's room was exactly the E-shaped door. However, in a moment, there was a "kacha" sound and the door on the other side was opened. He Yen gently pushed and the door opened. The moonlight fell on the desk in front of the window. The window wasn't closed, so the shadows of the trees outside swayed slightly and fell on the ground like water plants in a pond. He Yen tiptoed in and stood still after entering. She didn't know why she did such a thing and was annoyed for a moment. If someone was hiding in the dark, they would probably think that she was a thief. She wasn't here to steal anything and it wasn't her first time in Xiao Ju's room. She opened the door because she couldn't sleep and was bored to death. However, since she was already here, it would be a pity to leave now. He Yen looked around and saw that Xiao Ju's drinking sword wasn't hanging on the wall. There were 2 or 3 books scattered on the table. He Yen leaned over to take a look and saw that they were all military books. He didn't take his guqin and hid it to the side. Under the moonlight, it glowed like a rare treasure. Xiao Ju's room wasn't very luxurious. In fact, compared to Cheng Li Su's complex room, it was a bit too simple, so much so that it felt a bit bleak. However, He Yan remembered that second young master Xiao used to be very particular when he was at Xian Changguan. The room that he lived in was even more luxurious than Shi Bao's room. The floor was covered with a blanket and it didn't feel cold at all in the winter. He seemed to be afraid of the cold. When the weather turned cold, he would always wear brocade clothes and a fox fur coat. However, this room was cold and not as warm as it used to be. What did he go through all these years to become the commander-in-chief of the right army? He Yan thought about it and unknowingly walked to the table. Her fingers touched something and she looked down. She saw that beside the pen holder, there was a handful of colorful granules. She picked them up and looked at them under the moonlight. They were the persimmon gummies that she had stuffed into Xiao Ju's hands yesterday. The gummies had been outside for a long time and were not as soft as before. The sweet smell also seemed to have faded a lot. He Yan counted them. Not a single one was missing. He didn't touch them and just left them here. He didn't try one or two and didn't bring them to Zhang Tai. Why was that? Even if it was because he thought that the candied gummies were too crude or because of second young master Zhao's pride, it was fine if he didn't want them. These gummies were made by a pastry chef in a restaurant in the city. Although they weren't delicacies, they were definitely not crude. She had stuffed them into Xiao Ju's hands and closed the door last night. No one saw whether Xiao Ju had taken them or not and what his reaction was. However, if he really liked sweets, he wouldn't have left them here. She could almost see him casually throwing the gummies on the table and not even looking at her. Was he afraid that she had poisoned them? Or had Xiao Ju's taste changed over the years? There was no answer to this question. He Yan pondered. Suddenly, she felt something sweep across her face, bringing with it a slight coolness and moisture. It was furry. She looked up and saw salt-like things fluttering down from the outside, flying with the wind to the front of the table. It was late at night and the sound of bamboo breaking could be heard. She took 2 steps forward. Through the window, she could see the towering Mount Baiyue in the distance. The moonlight was cold and distant, falling on the wilderness and dancing with the snow in front of her eyes. "It's snowing," she said quietly in her heart. It turned out that the winter snow of the Liang province guards had arrived so early. Chapter 107. It was winter and the weather was very cold. Winter in Liangzhou was colder than the capital. During the day, it was still okay as they could warm their bodies during training. However, at night, it was extremely cold. The amount of firewood in the basin was far from enough. The number of soldiers who went to Wulu River to bathe also decreased. They all went to boil water to bathe themselves. He Yan was the same. In the blink of an eye, Xiao Ju had been gone for more than half a month. She estimated that Xiao Ju should have reached Zhangtai by now. However, the instructors did not talk about this on a daily basis. He Yan also did not know the situation in Zhangtai. She still trained with the new soldiers every day. However, because her body was not fully recovered, she could not follow Xiao Ju's triple daily training. On this day, He Yan and the new soldiers were training in the martial arts field. When it was almost evening, the training ended. He Yan talked to Hong Shan and a few others. Hong Shan rubbed his hands and blew into his palms. He, do you feel that it is too cold these few days? It's okay. He Yan replied. When she was in the Fuyue army, she had fought in the winter near the river. The tents were set up by the river. At night, the wind was biting cold and there was no firewood to burn. The soldiers slept together at night to ward off the cold. That was what it meant to be truly cold. You young people can withstand the cold. Hong Shan sighed and looked in the direction of Baiyue Mountain. Why does it snow in Liangzhou every day? It lasts for an entire night. He Yan followed his gaze. Baiue Mountain in winter was not as green as it was in summer. At a glance, the mountain was covered in white snow. The new soldiers went up the mountain every few days to chop firewood. They could not go further up the mountain. The higher they went, the thicker the snow. It was not safe. Actually, this weather is the best for hunting. Xiao Mai came over and said, "Big brother and I used to soak food in wine during the day and throw it beside the cave. There was nothing to eat during the winter. We ate rabbits and foxes when we saw them. When we went out at night, there was prey all over the ground. It was effortless and simple. The White Moon Mountain is so big, there should be a lot of rabbits and foxes." He licked his lips. "Stop," He Yan urged. "I think you'd better give up on this idea. The terrain on the mountain is complicated, and the snow is thick. Don't become a rabbit before the rabbit is hunted." "He Gu really looks down on us," Xiao Mai muttered. As they were talking, they saw a group of new recruits coming down from the end of the horse path that led from the martial arts practice field to Mount Baiue. Walking in the middle was the female doctor, Shinmushue. She was wearing a moon-white coat and skirt, with an apricot-colored long cloak embroidered with plum blossoms draped over her shoulders. Her hair tie was also plain white. As she slowly walked out of the snow-colored sky, she looked even more beautiful and fairy-like. Hong Shan stared blankly at her and said, "I can't believe there is such a woman in the world. She's so beautiful and kind-hearted." On such a cold day, a weak woman went up the mountain to gather medicine for the injured. Only a fairy could be so compassionate. Finally, he asked He Yan, "Don't you think so?" He Yan said, "That's right." Every few days, the new recruits took turns going up the mountain to gather firewood. Shinmushue would also go with them. There were some medicinal herbs on the mountain that could be found during the winter. There was a shortage of medicinal herbs in the garrison, especially during the winter. Some of the soldiers caught a cold, and it was difficult for them to recover in a short time. Shinmushue ordered someone to boil some medicinal concoction to expel the cold. She filled a wooden bucket with the concoction and gave everyone a bowl. After drinking the concoction, it would be hot and sweaty. It was very good for the body. She didn't look as sturdy as He Yan. She was gentle and weak. It was very rare for her to be able to go up the mountain with the new recruits on such a cold day. "Who's the recruit behind her?" Shi Tu asked with a frown. Everyone looked over and saw that the recruit behind Shinmushue had a person lying on his back. This person wasn't wearing a uniform, so it was obvious that he wasn't a recruit from the Liang Province Guards. They hadn't said anything yet, but curious recruits had already rushed over to find out what was going on. Not long after, some of the recruits who heard the news came back and told their companions what was going on. He Yan listened carefully and heard someone say, "That person is a hunter from the other side of the mountain. His family is so poor that they don't have enough food to eat, so he took the risk to come up the mountain to hunt. In the end, he was trapped by the snow. When Miss Shen and the others met this person, half of his body was buried in the snow. We had to dig him out of the snow and come back half alive. Then he's really lucky. Mount Baiue is unusually cold. If he had stayed for a few more minutes, even the gods wouldn't have been able to save him. Isn't that so?" Xiao Mai muttered, "Going up the mountain in this weather, he really doesn't want to live. There's nothing we can do about it. The lives of poor people aren't fortune-tellers. His family doesn't even have money to eat, so how can he care about other things?" Hong Shan sighed. After watching for a while, the crowd dispersed. However, this matter was not over. At night, Qing Lisu came back and said that she wanted to stay in Xiao Ju's room. He Yan asked curiously, "Didn't you refuse to move back?" Qing Lisu frowned and said, "Today, the person that Dr. Shin saved is staying in our room, so I was kicked out. I can't let him stay in Uncle's room. When Uncle comes back, he'll beat me to death. Forget it, I'll reluctantly stay here for a few days. After he leaves, I'll move back. Brother He, can you accompany me back to get the boxes tomorrow? I can't move them alone." "Of course, but I'm afraid that you won't be staying here for a few days. It'll be a long time. He Yen shook his head. Why? He Yen smiled and didn't answer. However, Qing Lisu soon knew why He Yen said that. The next day, after the day training, He Yen accompanied Qing Lisu back to get the boxes in the shared room. They just so happened to run into Shen Muxue, who was applying medicine to the hunter they saved yesterday. He Yen looked at her hands. Other than some medicine to replenish energy and medicine for frostbite, there was also some medicine for external injuries. He Yen asked, Miss Shen, is that person injured? There are wild beasts in the forest. He encountered a bear and was attacked by it. When he was trying to avoid it, he fell off the cliff and was buried in the snow. There are some external injuries. Qing Lisu asked, then his injuries are very serious. Will he have to stay in the Liang province guard for a long time? It'll be a long time before I can move back. Young Master Cheng, Shen Muxue said helplessly, even if his injuries are healed, he can't leave the Liang province guard for now. He came from the other side of the mountain. Right now, Baiyu Mountain is sealed off by the snow. I'm afraid that he will have to wait for the snow to melt or for sunny days before he can go up. If we let him go back now, he will only freeze to death on the mountain again. When Qing Lisu heard this, she almost jumped up. Then won't we have to wait an entire winter? When second young master comes back, perhaps there will be another way. Shen Muxue comforted her. He Yen noticed that when Shen Muxue said Xiao Ju, he didn't call him commander-in-chief, but second young master. It wasn't a master-servant relationship. Instead, it seemed like they were very familiar with each other. While he was thinking, they arrived in front of the room. There was no one else in the room at the moment. After training in the practice field, everyone had gone to eat and rest. He Yen used to lie on the edge of the wall, but now there was another person lying down. He wore a thin shirt and wrapped the blanket tightly around him. He seemed to be very cold. Shen Muxue placed the medicine tray on the table and turned around to call him. Hu Yuanzhong. When the person lying on the bed heard this, the blanket moved slightly. After a moment, he supported himself on the bed with both hands and slowly sat up. He was a man about 30 years old. His skin was dark, and his lips were cracked to the point that they were peeling. He looked a little thin and weak. He lifted the blanket and looked at Shen Muxue. He said hurriedly, Dr. Shen. You should change your dressing. Shen Muxue said, sit by the bed and roll up your trousers. The man called Hu Yuanzhong looked even more nervous. He rubbed his hands and stammered, how can I trouble a female doctor? I'll do it myself. He bent down. As soon as he moved, he hissed in pain. When Shen Muxue saw this, he squatted down in front of Hu Yuanzhong and helped him roll up his trousers. Sure enough, there were scars all over his legs. They were probably caused by the rocks and branches on the mountain. It's not done yet. Shen Muxue said, I'll apply more medicine today. Hu Yuanzhong nodded blankly. Let me do it. At this moment, He Yan's voice interrupted. Before Shen Muxue could react, she reached out and took the medicine from Shen Muxue's hands. She squatted down and said, Miss Shen, please get up first. This. Hu Yuanzhong was a little surprised. This little brother, my name is He Yan. The bed you're sleeping on now is mine. Miss Shen is a girl after all. It's not convenient for you. I'll apply medicine for brother Hu. It shouldn't be a problem, right? He Yan smiled and looked at Hu Yuanzhong. Hu Yuanzhong sighed in relief. Of course, I don't want to trouble Dr. Shen. He Yan, stop fooling around. Shen Muxue frowned slightly. There's no difference between men and women in front of doctors. You don't know how to apply medicine. I know how to apply medicine. Dr. Shen, don't be nervous. You should take a look at Qing Lisu first. I saw that he was coughing this morning. I don't want him to catch a cold. Qing Lisu said, that's right, Dr. Shen. I feel that my throat is a little dry. Shin Mushue was stunned. He said, really? Then he stood up and said to Ching Lisu, come outside with me. I'll take a look at him first. The two of them left. Only Hu Yuanzhong and He Yan were left in the room. He Yan first helped him clean up the blood that had seeped out from his leg, then applied a thin layer of medicine on his wound. He asked, Big brother Hu, your injury is a bit serious, does it hurt a lot? It's okay. Hu Yuanzhong said, it's just some external injuries. Although he said that, he said it through gritted teeth. It looked like it was very difficult for him to speak. He Yan stopped what he was doing and used a little more force. Hu Yuanzhong cried out in pain. Ah, I'm sorry, brother Hu. He Yan was embarrassed. I wasn't careful. It's okay, it's okay. Dr. Shen is still the most attentive. I'm a big man and clumsy. I've hurt brother Hu. Brother Hu, please don't mind. Hu Yuanzhong forced a smile and said, don't say that. He Yan smiled and lowered his head to continue applying medicine. He snorted coldly in his heart. Just now, she saw clearly that although Hu Yuanzhong refused to apply the medicine himself, he cried out in pain as soon as he moved. When Shin Mushue squatted down, Hu Yuanzhong's eyes flashed with a hint of joy. Although he hid it very well, He Yan still saw it. She hated this kind of person who was lustful. Shin Mushue saved Hu Yuanzhong's life. Hu Yuanzhong had dirty thoughts about his savior. What kind of person was this? When he pulled up Hu Yuanzhong's trousers, He Yan could clearly see these so-called serious injuries. They looked messy and serious, but in fact, they were all external injuries. He Yan, a girl, could not make a sound when she suffered more serious injuries. If this person was so poor that he risked his life to go up the mountain to hunt, he would not be so delicate. When a person was so hungry that they could not afford to eat, how would they have the mind to rack their brains for dirty thoughts? With just a few words, one could see Hu Yuanzhong's character. Shin Mushue was kind and pure. He was also a doctor who treated patients, so he did not care about these tricks. He Yan, on the other hand, saw everything clearly as a bystander. He only felt uncomfortable in his heart. Big brother Hu, what are your plans after you recover? He Yan asked. Hu Yuanzhong scratched his head. I haven't thought about it yet. Why don't you stay in the Yangzhou guards? Soldiers have enough to eat. You won't starve, He Yan joked. That's good too, Hu Yuanzhong said with a silly smile. He actually said that was good too. This time, He Yan was even more surprised. She was just casually teasing him, but Hu Yuanzhong actually agreed. He didn't even say anything like, this is too embarrassing. It could be seen that, firstly, he didn't feel grateful. Secondly, he never thought about his future plans. A person who did not know what the future held should always be worrying about what to do in the future. How could he be so careless? He Yan was instantly displeased. Could it be that Hu Yuanzhong wanted to rely on the Yangzhou guards to take advantage of Shin Mushue all the time? Thinking of this, He Yan quickly applied the medicine on Hu Yuanzhong's wound. She passed a bowl of medicine to him and said, Big brother Hu, drink the medicine first. Hu Yuanzhong reached out to take it. Thank you. He drank the medicine rather quickly. He straightened his neck and gulped down the medicine. Then, he passed the bowl back to He Yan. He Yan reached out to take it. He saw that Hu Yuanzhong's outstretched hand was covered in red rashes from the web between his thumb and index finger to the inside of his wrist. He Yan paused. Hu Yuanzhong noticed He Yan's movements and asked, What's wrong with brother He? Big brother Hu, do you want a female doctor to take a look at the rashes on your hand? He Yan asked, Did you get it on the mountain too? Hu Yuanzhong was stunned. He rubbed his wrist twice and smiled. No need. It should subside in a few days. It's not a serious illness. There's no need to trouble a female doctor. If that's the case, He Yan nodded and smiled. Then it's nothing. She stared at Hu Yuanzhong and didn't say anything for a while. Hu Yuanzhong also felt strangely uncomfortable. He touched his face and asked, Brother He, is there something on my face? No. He Yen smiled and shook his head. I'll take the empty bowl out first. Although Miss Shen is a doctor, she's still a girl. I have nothing to do these few days, so I'll run errands for Miss Shen. I'll take care of Big Brother Hu's wound medicine. He pretended not to see the disappointment in Hu Yuanzhong's eyes and turned to leave. When he left, Shen Muxue was telling Qing Lisu to stick out her tongue. Seeing He Yen come out, he asked suspiciously, so fast? There weren't many wounds to begin with. He Yen asked, how's Qing Lisu? I ate too much spicy food these few days. My throat is smoking. Qing Lisu was embarrassed. It's nothing serious. Then it's fine. You can go back. He Yen returned the medicine tray to Shen Muxue and said to Shen Muxue, I've already discussed it with Big Brother Hu. I'll take care of Big Brother Hu's wound medicine these few days. From tomorrow onwards, I'll come to Miss Shen's room every day at this time to take the medicine and send it to Big Brother Hu. Miss Shen won't have to make another trip. Shen Muxue was still a little hesitant. Then it's settled. Take it as my thanks for the box of scar removal and muscle revitalization ointment that Miss Shen gave me. He Yen put his arm around Qing Lisu's shoulder. Then we'll go first. He and Qing Lisu walked away. On the way, Qing Lisu asked him, Big Brother He, what's wrong? What? He Yen came back to his senses. After you came out of Hu Yuanzhong's room, you stopped talking. What happened in the room just now? Did you two have a fight? No. He Yen took 2 steps and thought for a while. He stopped and said to Qing Lisu, you go back first. I have something to talk to Hong Shan about. But you haven't eaten anything yet. I'll go get 2 steamed buns. He Yen waved his hand. You go back first and wait for me. See you later. Hong Shan and Xiao Mai were eating porridge. When they saw He Yen, they made room for him and said, Why are you so late today? I thought you weren't coming. I had something to do on the way here. He Yen took a steamed bun, but he didn't wolf it down like he usually did. He only took a bite and stopped. After a long time, he said, Brother Shan, sure too, I have something that I need your help with. Why are you so serious? Hong Shan put down the bowl in his hand. What do you need our help with? The hunter that Dr. Shen rescued from the mountains yesterday, Hu Yuanzhong. He's in your room now, right? He Yen said, for the next few days, you have to train during the day. Can you help me keep an eye on him at night? Hong Shan and Shi Tu looked at each other. Hong Shan asked, Why don't I understand what you're saying? What's wrong with Hu Yuanzhong? Why do you want to keep an eye on him? I think there's something wrong with him. This time, even Xiao Mai didn't have time to eat. The atmosphere was solemn for a moment. Shi Tu asked in a low voice, What's wrong? Maybe I'm thinking too much. I'm not sure yet. But I think that maybe it's not a coincidence that he was rescued from the mountains by Dr. Shen. Upon hearing this, Hong Shan's eyes widened. A spy? Keep your voice down, He Yen said. I'm just suspicious. That's why I need you to keep an eye on him. See if he does anything unusual at night. No. Hong Shan still felt incredulous. You have to tell us what's wrong with him that made you suspect him. He Yen took a deep breath and said, I'll tell you in a few days. For now, I just need your help to keep an eye on him. I hope I'm thinking too much, she said softly. At night, after parting ways with Hong Shan and the others, He Yen returned to her room. After familiarizing herself with the place, she lay on the bed. She was full of worries and couldn't fall asleep. Meeting Hu Yuanzhong today was an accident. Who knew that in the end, it would upset her and make her feel uneasy. He Yen didn't make up what she said to Hong Shan and the others. She did suspect that Hu Yuanzhong was a spy who had infiltrated the Yangzhou guards for other purposes. As for how she found this suspicious point, it was because when she handed the medicine to Hu Yuanzhong today, when Hu Yuanzhong returned it, she saw a dense red rash that covered the area between his thumb and index finger to the inside of his wrist. It made her think of the Chang people. The place where the Chang people lived was covered in dense forests. The weather was humid all year round. When the Chang soldiers held swords, it was easy for them to get red rashes from the area between their thumb and forefinger to the wrist. When He Yan was General Feihong, he had specially looked for military doctors to study the rashes. Even though the Chang people later entered the Central Plains, the rashes didn't disappear in a short period of time. Therefore, when she saw the rash between Hu Yuanzhong's thumb and forefinger, she immediately thought of the Chang soldiers without hesitation. However, she wasn't completely sure. All the rashes in the world looked the same. It could be caused by the humid weather, or it could be caused by touching sensitive objects. There was no need to suspect the other party because of a rash. However, it was probably because He Yan had developed a habit of being cautious when he was a general, especially when it came to the Chang people. Or maybe it was because He Yan had sensed Hu Yuanzhong's hidden feelings for Shen Muxue and had a bad impression of him. Now, she immediately suspected him. Thinking about it carefully, there were indeed many suspicious points. For example, the snow on the mountain was so heavy. The other side of Mount Baiyue was shady, so the snow would only be deeper. The new recruits couldn't even cross this side. How did Hu Yuanzhong cross the other side alone? Since he said that his family was so poor that they didn't have any food to eat, why didn't he find a gentler way to do it? For example, he could help people move goods at the docks and do some manual labor. At least, he could temporarily resist the cold and hunger. One had to know that when hunting on Mount Baiyue, the best-case scenario was that he could hunt a wild beast to alleviate his urgent needs. However, there was a higher possibility that he would die on the mountain and lose both his wealth and life. Leaving behind an easier path to take, and instead taking a seemingly inconceivably difficult path, this was not facing difficulties head-on, this was stupidity. Looking at how he pretended to cry out in pain to get Shen Muxue to personally take care of him, he didn't seem like a stupid person. The more He Yan thought about it, the more suspicious she felt. Unfortunately, Xiaozhu wasn't here, so she couldn't remind Xiaozhu. But even if Xiaozhu was here, she couldn't directly mention the most important point. The Chang tribe was thousands of li away from the capital. The new recruits of the Yangzhou guards couldn't have seen the Chang tribe soldiers. Even Xiaozhu might not have fought with the Chang tribe. He Yan was born in the capital, so how could she know the secret habits of the Chang tribe? She was afraid that if she said it, the first person to be suspected would not be Hu Yuanzhong, but herself. That year, she led the soldiers to quell the rebellion of Xichang. The commander of the Chang tribe, Ridamuji, died on the battlefield, and the rest of the Chang tribe surrendered. The next few years were peaceful. The Chang tribe was very peaceful, and there were no disturbances. But that didn't mean she could truly relax. If this really was a Chang person, an ordinary unarmed and defenseless commoner, how could he have just so happened to ascend White Moon Mountain on this type of snowy day? Moreover, he was even picked up by Shen Muxue and entered the Liang province guards. If there were too many coincidences, then they wouldn't be coincidences anymore. Someone must have done it on purpose. Now that Xiaozhu wasn't here, if there really was a conspiracy, how could she deal with it? Xiaozhu wasn't here. Xiaozhu wasn't here. In an instant, He Yan sat up, and a terrifying thought flashed through her mind. Why did this person come when Xiaozhu wasn't here? Could it be that the call for help from Zhang Tai was also fake? Attack in the east, attack in the west. She had to memorize this rule in military books every day. How could she forget? At some point, the snow stopped. He Yan looked out the window. The wind outside was calm, and the snow covered the ground. It was so quiet that even the sound of a pin dropping could be heard. But under this calm, there might be a shocking undercurrent, waiting for the right time to flood the heavens. Chapter 108. With so many things hidden in her heart, she couldn't sleep well at night. The next day, Yen woke up before the sun rose. After the morning training, she went to talk to Hong Shan. Hong Shan said, "Yesterday, Tu and I took turns guarding him for half the night, but we didn't find anything wrong." Yen looked at Tu, and Tu nodded at her. "Nothing happened the whole night?" "No, he slept more deeply than we did." Hong Shan looked at Yen suspiciously. "You're thinking too much. Hu Yuanzhong is just an ordinary hunter. I don't think there's anything wrong with what he said. His family is so poor, it's quite pitiful." Gu, what's wrong with him? Why are you so suspicious of him?" Xiaomai asked curiously. "What's wrong?" "In the end, it's just a rash between the thumb and index finger and wrist. It's not a big problem. It's just that he picked the time when Xiaoju went out, which made her feel that something was wrong. She had been on the edge of life and death on the battlefield too many times. Sometimes, the body can make more direct judgments than the brain. One of the old generals she followed often said, "Ordinary people's intuition may be wrong, but people like us, when it comes to danger, most of the time, it's true." She pondered for a moment and said, "Let me take a look." Hong Shan shrugged and didn't ask any more questions. In the evening, all the day training was over. Yen went to Shenmushua's room to get some medicine, and then went to find Hu Yuanzhong. Hu Yuanzhong was alone in the room, looking down at a piece of paper. When Yen pushed the door open, he immediately hid the paper in his arms. "Brother Hu, what are you doing in the room alone?" Yen pretended not to see his actions and asked with a smile. "Nothing," Hu Yuanzhong sighed. "My leg hasn't recovered, so I can't get out of bed. I can only stay in the room. Sorry for the trouble." "It's no trouble at all," Yen said with a smile. "You're so badly injured, of course you need to recuperate." She helped Hu Yuanzhong roll up his trousers and squatted down to apply medicine. Yesterday, she didn't look carefully. Today, since she came with doubts, she looked very carefully. Both of the hunter's legs were covered with scars. The biggest one was probably caused by Tu. It was so deep that the bones could be seen. It was also the most serious one. "I heard from Miss Shen that big brother who encountered a bear when he went up the mountain." Yen casually asked, "Are there still bears in this season?" The bears of the White Moon Mountain were probably hibernating during the day. It was not easy for Hu Yuanzhong to bump into one. "Yeah." Hu Yuanzhong scratched his head. "I was unlucky. I didn't find the fox but met the bear first." Yen shook his head. "How can you say that he's unlucky? Not everyone can escape unscathed after encountering a bear." "I heard that bears don't have good eyesight, but they are very sensitive to smells. Big brother who was injured and covered in blood, but the bear didn't chase after you. Big brother who is already very strong." Also, Yen didn't look at Hu Yuanzhong's expression. His hands didn't stop moving as he continued, "Big brother who was buried in the snow. It was also very coincidental that Miss Shen rescued him. Our Liang province guard recruits only go up the mountain once every 3 to 5 days. If Big brother who had gone up the mountain one day later, or if he had fallen in the wrong place, I'm afraid he wouldn't be in the Liang province guard right now." Hu Yuanzhong was stunned. He nodded and said, "That's true. This is all thanks to Miss Shen." Yen smiled slightly. After applying the medicine, he helped Hu Yuanzhong pull down his trousers and handed over the bowl of medicine. When Hu Yuanzhong took the bowl of medicine, Yen's gaze fell on his wrist. He had pulled his sleeves a little longer, but he could still faintly see a patch of red between his thumb and index finger. "How long has Big brother Hu been a hunter?" Hu Yuanzhong drank the medicine as he said, 7 or 8 years. "Have you always hunted on White Moon Mountain?" she asked very quickly. Hu Yuanzhong hesitated for a moment before saying, "Yes." "Then in the past few years, have you ever gone up White Moon Mountain on snowy days like this?" "No, never." "Why did you go up again this year?" It's really because I didn't have enough food to fill my stomach. Hu Yuanzhong drank the last mouthful of medicine and looked strangely at He Yan. Brother He, why are you asking this? He Yan lowered his head and smiled. I'm just a bit curious. She reached out to take the empty bowl in Hu Yuanzhong's hand. Hu Yuanzhong reached out his hand. When He Yan's hand reached out to Hu Yuanzhong, it suddenly changed direction and chopped directly at Hu Yuanzhong's face. Hu Yuanzhong couldn't dodge in time and could only retreat to the side in panic. He Yan's hand struck his chest. The latter screamed and spat out a mouthful of blood. However, the young man didn't stop at all. He directly reached into Hu Yuanzhong's lapel and took out a piece of paper. Give it back to me, Hu Yuanzhong shouted. However, because of He Yan's slap just now, his voice was hoarse and unpleasant to the ears. Half of his body was lying on the couch and he reached out to He Yan in vain. The movement was so loud that it alarmed the people around. The surrounding recruits heard the noise and ran in. As soon as they came in, they saw Hu Yuanzhong clutching his chest and spitting out blood. He Yan stood beside the couch with a piece of paper in his hand. What happened? What happened? Hu Yuanzhong said with difficulty, he took my things. What did you take from him? The recruit asked. He Yan lowered his head and looked at the yellow paper in his hand. There was a poem written on the yellow paper, my heart is like the water of the West River, day and night flowing east without rest. The handwriting was beautiful. At first glance, it was obvious that it was written by a woman. What is this? He Yan frowned and asked him. Hu Yuanzhong stared at him. He was furious and didn't say anything. What happened? Shen Mushua's voice came from behind. She happened to be nearby. She heard the noise and came over. What she saw was such a hostile scene. He Yan. She looked at He Yan suspiciously and then looked at Hu Yuanzhong who was clutching his chest. She walked to Hu Yuanzhong's side and asked in surprise, why is your injury worse? Then she saw the blood on Hu Yuanzhong's lips. Who did this? Hu Yuanzhong stared at He Yan. Shen Mushua frowned. He Yan, what did you do? I just gave him a light slap. He Yan smiled. I probably didn't control my strength well. Nonsense. He is still injured. How can he take your slap? Hu Yuanzhong struggled to get up and reached out a hand to He Yan. His tone was still angry. Give it back to me. He Yan shrugged his shoulders and returned the paper with the love poem to him. What is this? A recruit asked. What did you take from him? Shen Mushua also looked over. Hu Yuanzhong said sadly, this was written by my deceased wife, it was actually a relic of his deceased wife. He Yan, why did you take someone else's relic? A recruit couldn't stand it. No wonder he is so angry. I didn't know it was a relic. I was just playing with Brother Hu. He Yan said shamefully. Brother Hu won't be angry with me, right? Hu Yuanzhong looked at He Yan. He seemed to be angry but couldn't vent it. In the end, he had to endure it and said, it's okay. Don't do this kind of thing in the future. After that, he coughed violently again. He was extremely weak. Shen Mushua saw this scene and his expression didn't look good. He only said to He Yan, forget it. He Yan, there is nothing for you to do here. You can leave first. I will still be responsible for Hu Yuanzhong's medicine. In the future, you don't have to come here every day. It was as if He Yan was the god of plague. Okay. He Yan wasn't angry and answered with a smile. He glanced at Hu Yuanzhong and turned to leave. As soon as he stepped out of the room, the smile on his face disappeared. Just now, she did it on purpose. When people are in danger, they will instinctively react. Just like when Ding Yi tested her in Liangzhou city to see if she was really blind. If Hu Yuanzhong wasn't as badly injured as he appeared to be, he would naturally counterattack. But he didn't and took He Yan's palm. If it was just that, it wouldn't be a big deal. But when He Yen launched that palm, he also deliberately took note of it. The palm that she gave Hu Yuanzhong looked fierce on the surface, but in reality, she didn't use much strength. At most, Hu Yuanzhong's flesh would hurt, but he definitely wouldn't bleed. After all, He Yen didn't want to kill anyone. If everything was just her thinking too much, wouldn't Hu Yuanzhong have suffered for nothing? Here was the problem. He Yen was very confident in her control of strength. How could such a harmless palm make Hu Yuanzhong vomit blood? If she didn't misjudge her strength, then this person was lying. He Yen thought that Hu Yuanzhong was lying. As for the love poem on the paper in his arms, it was even stranger. A person who carried his deceased wife's belongings with him was naturally a person with deep feelings. A person with deep feelings, when facing a beautiful female doctor, shouldn't have other thoughts. He Yen looked at all of this as if she was watching a lame play. Unfortunately, even if she was full of doubts, she couldn't tell anyone about this. She was afraid that if she told others that the palm just now was a fake, they would think that she was avoiding responsibility and deliberately said it lightly. This was indeed a bit troublesome. She walked and walked. Before long, Xiao Mai and the others followed her. When they saw her, they first let out a sigh of relief and said in a small voice, He-go, they said you beat Hu Yuanzhong. Is it true? It had only been the time for a stick of incense to burn. How did the entire Liang province know? It's true. You're still suspicious of him? Hong Shan frowned and said, if you suspect that there's something wrong with him, we'll help you keep an eye on him. Why beat him up? Do you know that right now, the entire Liang province guard is saying that you. He wanted to say something, but stopped. He Yen asked, what are they saying about me? They're saying that He-gu is using your strength to bully the weak, arrogant and despotic, Xiao Mai said. He Yen was silent. Things had become even stranger. He-gu, what do we do now? Xiao Mai looked at him worriedly. Do you want to explain to the others? There's no need, He Yen said, narrowing his eyes. Since this person had spread the rumors so quickly, he must have come for her. Explaining would be futile. Compared to explaining these meaningless rumors, she was more suspicious of Hu Yuanzhong's goal and how she could expose this person's flaws. You guys continue to keep an eye on him at night, He Yen said. I'll keep watching. Xiao Mai and Hong Shan looked at each other, not saying anything else. Several days passed in a row. Everything was calm and peaceful. Nothing happened in the Liang province guard. Xiao Mai helped He Yen keep an eye on Hu Yuanzhong every day, but she didn't find any flaws. On the other hand, Hong Shan and the others didn't sleep well at night. During training the next day, they were absent-minded with dark circles under their eyes and were scolded by Liang Ping several times. As for He Yen, he wanted to personally see how Hu Yuanzhong was doing every day and see if he could get more information. However, Shen Muxue guarded against him like he was guarding against a thief. He strictly forbade He Yen from getting close to Hu Yuanzhong, fearing that He Yen would accidentally injure Hu Yuanzhong again while fooling around. Thus, after a few days, He Yen couldn't even touch Hu Yuanzhong's side, much less find any flaws. That night, He Yen walked to the training field alone. Because of his injury, He Yen changed his night training to once every 3 days. Xiao Ju had been gone for more than half a month, but there was no news at all. He Yen secretly asked Qing Lisu if there was any news from Zhang Tai, but Qing Lisu didn't know either. Originally, when Xiao Ju was here, he didn't think much of it. Now that he was gone, he felt that the Liang province guard couldn't do without him. Otherwise, if he revealed a little bit of this matter to Xiao Ju, with his mind, he would definitely be able to figure out what was going on. Now that she didn't even have someone to discuss this with, it was really difficult. She walked over to the crossbow and was about to practice when she heard movement from the other end of the horse path. She looked up and saw a black shadow riding a horse toward Mount Baiyue. It was the middle of the night, how could there be someone going up the mountain? However, The weather had been good these past few days, and the snow on the mountain had melted a little, so it was easier to travel than in the past few days. He Yen wanted to call for help, but the training field was too far away from the shared bunks where the new recruits lived. If he called for help, he wouldn't be able to catch up to this person. Seeing that person running farther and farther away and about to disappear into the darkness of the mountain forest, He Yen didn't care about anything else. He pulled out a horse from the stable, jumped onto it, and chased after the person. In the winter on Mount Baiyue, the soil was bitingly cold. Especially since the snow had melted, it was very easy for the horse to slip on the ground. The person in front of him didn't light a match and just moved forward under the starlight in the forest. He Yen also couldn't see clearly, so he followed and couldn't overtake the person. He Yen also knew the terrain of Mount Baiyue very well, so he looked for small paths to take. He wanted to lead He Yen into a ditch several times. However, He Yen had been here for many years, so he remembered the path much better than other people. Previously, he had been here once to fight for the flag, and then twice to chop firewood. He had already memorized the dangerous places, so he didn't fall for it. After a few times, that person realized that He Yen didn't fall for the bait, so he turned his horse around and went in a different direction. He Yen chased after him very closely. She suspected that this person was Hu Yuanzhong, but why did Hu Yuanzhong go up the mountain in the middle of the night? He couldn't have taken advantage of the dead of night when there was no one around to cross the mountain ridge and go home. One thing, if one could see too little, it would be difficult to deduce the whole picture. Since she couldn't deduce the whole picture, she didn't need to waste time. She just needed to find the source and ask clearly. She had to catch this person today. He Yen didn't take the small paths, so the road was much wider. He Yen urged his horse to catch up, and the distance between them was getting closer and closer. When there were only a few dozen feet between them, he jumped up and threw half of his body at the other person's horse. That person couldn't dodge in time and was forced to stop his horse, wanting to escape. He Yen pounced and fought with him. She had come and left in a hurry, so there was only an iron cudgel left on the weapon rack. He Yen casually took it, treating it as better than fighting with his bare hands. At this moment, that person jumped up. He Yen finally saw clearly that this person's face was covered, and his entire body was wrapped up tightly, only revealing a pair of eyes. His figure was similar to Hu Yuanzhong's, but the light was dim, so it was difficult to distinguish his identity from his eyes. He stood still, holding a large saber in his hand. The blade of the saber was like a crescent moon, flashing a biting cold light in the night. A scimitar. He Yan's heart beat wildly. The Chang soldiers loved to use scimitars because it was convenient to cut meat. Not only could it kill people, but it could also eat meat. He Yan had experienced the power of the scimitar before. She had seen a comrade hit by this scimitar, and his head fell to the ground before blood even flowed out. During the years when the Western Chang invaded the Central Plains, Commander Ridamuji's favorite thing to do was to use the scimitar to cut off the captives' heads, string them together, and tie them to the tail of his beloved horse. Wherever he went, people were terrified. Now that she saw this scimitar, He Yen knew that this person was from the Chang tribe. She frowned. "Are you really from the Chang tribe?" Hearing this, that person laughed strangely, and his voice was hoarse. "How did you know?" "Cut the crap." He Yen placed the iron cudgel on the ground and stared at him coldly. "Tell me, why did you sneak into the Liang province guards?" "Sure." That person put his index finger to his lips and said, "Be quiet, so that we won't be discovered." He saw that He Yen didn't say anything and seemed to be interested. He said again, "If you defeat me, I'll tell you." "Insolent." He Yen reprimanded. As soon as she finished speaking, she pounced on that person. Although the iron cudgel was not as sharp as the scimitar, it was superior in its simplicity and toughness, making it difficult for people to get close to her. He Yen was injured earlier, and her wounds were not fully healed, so her movements were restricted. Even so, she was evenly matched with this person. The masked person used the scimitar extremely well, so skillful that it was shocking. His attacks were also very ruthless, and every move was aimed at He Yan's heart. He Yan was forced to retreat step by step. Suddenly, she stopped in her tracks. Because she stopped in a hurry, the snow around her feet was kicked up. She looked back and saw that behind her was an abyss. "You've been discovered." That person laughed. "Why didn't you fall for it?" "Because your technique is too lame," He Yan said coldly. Then, she slammed the iron cudgel on the ground and jumped forward with the help of the cudgel, landing behind the masked person. Her hands did not stop moving, and she fiercely chopped down on the masked person's head. But the cudgel missed. The masked person dodged sideways, and the iron cudgel hit his shoulder. Even so, it was enough. He Yan practiced stone weights every day, and her strength was no longer as weak as when she first entered the Liang province guards. Even a man with a physique like Huang Xiong's would suffer, let alone this person. He Yan's attack made the masked person groan in pain. He almost lost his grip on the scimitar in his hand. Even so, his right hand lost its strength, and he could not wield the scimitar for the time being. "How is it?" He Yan sneered. The masked person did not speak. He turned around and ran forward, intending to escape. He Yan frowned and followed closely. Her endurance and physical strength were amazing, and she ran fast enough. For a moment, the masked person could not get rid of He Yan. As long as he caught up with this person and took off his mask, he would be able to find out his identity. Both the witness and the material evidence were gathered. If it was really Hu Yuanzhong, Shen Han should be able to interrogate him and find out what they were planning to do in the middle of the night. Just as he was thinking, he suddenly saw the person in front of him stop. He shouted at He Yan, "I have a gift for you." The scimitar was thrown at He Yan's heart. He Yan subconsciously caught it and held the hilt. Then, he saw another person roll out of the forest. Under the night sky, the person who rolled out was actually wearing the red warrior robes of the Liang province guards. The mountain path was a long slope. The new recruit rolled all the way down, and if he went any further down, he would be in a bottomless abyss. He Yan watched the masked person laugh mischievously and escape into the depths of the forest. He gritted his teeth and turned around to chase after the new recruit who was rolling down. The new recruit in the warrior robes rolled faster and faster. He didn't even make a sound. He Yan's heart sank. He flew up and landed in the middle of the long slope. He caught the new recruit in his arms and the two of them rolled to the side. After a while, they finally stopped in front of a tree. The body in his arms was still warm, but he didn't make a sound. He Yan lowered her head to look. Under the starlight, a young face was revealed. She was stunned for a moment. There were tens of thousands of new recruits in the Liang province guards. She couldn't remember the names of every single one of them. At most, she could recall those who looked familiar. She remembered this person's face. It was the cowardly ghost king Shao Han she met on the way down from the battle for the flag on Mount Baiyue. A few days ago, the young man who thanked her with a red face. Now, his face was completely pale. His eyes were wide open, as if he was filled with terror before he died. His clothes were red. Nothing could be seen, but they were wet and stuck to his body. He Yan lowered her head to look at her hands. They were covered in blood. She unbuttoned the young man's clothes with trembling hands. There was a huge bloody hole in his chest. Some of his flesh had been hooked away, making it look hollow. He had died under a machete. No matter how many deaths she had seen, He Yan couldn't remain calm every time she faced the death of someone close to her. She closed her eyes. A wave of anger rose in her heart. She muttered in a low voice, "Bastard." He was still so young. He hadn't even been on the battlefield, yet he had died in the desolate night of Mount Baiyue. If He Yan hadn't followed the masked man up the mountain tonight, he would have died without a sound. The next day, his brothers in the guard station would have discovered that one of them was missing. Missing, one of them. Why did they drag this young man up the mountain and kill him? Was he killed because he saw something, or was there another reason? No, no. Yen tightened her grip on the young man. She had fallen into a trap. Just as she thought of this, she heard rustling sounds in front of her. Someone was shouting, "Did you see anyone? Where is he?" Suddenly, the bushes in front of her were brushed aside. A recruit's face appeared. He was holding a torch in his hand. He happened to meet Yan's eyes. He didn't need to think to know how ferocious the scene was. She was holding a machete in her hand. The machete was still stained with blood. Her hands were also stained with blood. In her hands, a recruit from Liangzhou was lying on his back. He died with his eyes open. There was a bloody hole in his chest. It was a shocking sight. I found him. The recruit shouted in panic. He scrambled backward. Murder! Yen killed someone. People quickly arrived. Yen raised her head and saw dozens of people, including Shinhan, Liang Ping, and the other instructors. They stared at Yen in surprise. Dumao shouted, "Yen, you killed someone." The weapon was in her hands, and the body was at her feet. She went up the mountain in the middle of the night and acted suspiciously. No matter how they looked at it, she looked like a spy with ulterior motives. This was the real gift from the masked man. Chapter 109. I didn't kill him. Yen stood up and faced them. The recruit who first discovered Yen pointed at him in fear and shouted, "If it wasn't you, then who was it?" At night, I went to the martial arts field to practice my crossbow. I accidentally saw someone riding a horse towards White Moon Mountain. The situation was critical, so I followed him. I fought with him for a while, but he ran away. Before he ran away, he threw this brother down. By the time I saved him, he was already dead. Where did you get this scimitar? Shinhan asked in a deep voice. It belonged to him. He threw the scimitar over. Is he crazy? He gave his weapon to someone else. Can't you think before you lie? Dumao didn't believe him. No, I think he's very smart, Yen said calmly. Now, with this scimitar, I'm the suspect. If the weapon was stuffed into her hands, wouldn't it mean that she was the murderer who killed the recruit? Shinhan stared at Yen. When you went up the mountain, did you bring a weapon? I brought an iron head stick, Yen said. When I rolled down the mountain with this dead brother, I lost it on the road. The chief instructor asked someone to look for it. Maybe they can find it. Shinhan ordered Liang Ping. You take some people to look for it. Be careful, there's a signal. Liang Ping nodded and said yes. Yen felt a little tired and sat down on the chair too. Her injury hadn't fully recovered. After today's torment, the old injury on her waist was aching. She really wanted to rest for a while. After a while, Liang Ping came back with the recruit. He said to Shinhan, "Chief instructor, we didn't find the iron head stick." I think he's lying. Dumao frowned. He only brought this scimitar when he went up the mountain. Yen secretly sighed. Since the other party came for her, he naturally wouldn't leave any evidence behind. Presumably, when she went to save the recruit, she had already picked up the iron head stick. However, she still had a trick up her sleeve. I suspect that this person is Hu Yuanzhong, Yen said. When I fought with him, the iron head staff hit his right shoulder. As long as we return to the city guard station, we can check if he went out at night and see if there is a wound on his right shoulder. Are you quibbling? A recruit looked at her suspiciously. Yen shrugged. Right now, I'm unarmed. There are so many of you. Are you afraid of me? It's a small matter to wrongly accuse me, but it's a big matter to lead a wolf into the house. If the true culprit is hidden among the Liang province guards, perhaps the next person to be assassinated will be you, brother. She spoke neither too fast nor too slow, but her tone was cold. The new recruit who spoke was frightened and didn't dare to continue speaking. Ma Damii looked at Shin Han and said, "Chief Instructor, this." To be honest, he quite liked He Yen. It was rare for a young man of his age to be so outstanding in all aspects. Moreover, his personality was cheerful and easygoing, without the slightest bit of arrogance. He was very likable. However, this was a matter of life and death, so he couldn't be careless. Bring him back first and see if what he said is true. Shin Han turned around and said, "Listen to my orders and go down the mountain immediately." He Yen secretly sighed in relief. Fortunately, Shin Han was reasonable and didn't kill him with one blow. When they went down the mountain, the atmosphere was a bit gloomy, perhaps because of the death of one of their companions. He Yen asked Ma Damii, "Instructor Ma, why are you going up the mountain?" Ma Damii had a kind smile on her face and always treated He Yen kindly. Even at this time, she still patiently answered his question. A recruit woke up in the middle of the night to go to the toilet and saw someone riding a horse towards Mount Baiyue. He told the chief instructor, and the chief instructor told us to go up the mountain to investigate. Before we came, we didn't know it was you. Wasn't this the same process as when she chased after the masked man? He Yen faintly felt that something was wrong, but he didn't say anything. Since you said you fought with the masked man, Ma Damii asked, how was his skill? Very good. If I wasn't injured, I could have caught him if I delayed a little longer. However, this person is cunning and cruel. He used the corpse of his comrades to lure me away and escaped by himself. He Yen became angry when he talked about this. Today's incident was all arranged by him. Ma Damii smiled and asked in an ambiguous tone, "Young man, although I have always admired you, I have to ask you one thing. What's so special about you that the masked man would go around in such a big circle to slander and scheme against you? What's so special about me?" He Yen carefully thought about it. She was kind to people and had no conflicts with the recruits of the Liangzhou guards. It was just a few days ago when she quarreled with Hu Yuanzhong. Hu Yuanzhong should be the only person in the Liangzhou guards who was hostile to her. But what did she do? She never directly asked about Hu Yuanzhong's background. At most, she asked him a few questions in a roundabout way. Even if she suspected that he was a Chang person, she didn't reveal any of it. If this was the reason he schemed to frame He Yen, wouldn't it be too obvious? Thinking about it, he finally went down the mountain and returned to the Liangzhou guards. In the middle of the night, the Liangzhou guards were bustling with activity. He Yen had instructors all around him, so he went to Hu Yuanzhong's room first. Everyone in the room was sleeping. When the instructors told him to get up, he was a bit confused. Xiaomai groggily called out, "Why are you up so early today? It's not even time yet." When she saw who it was, she was so shocked that she almost put on her shoes the wrong way. He Yen didn't hesitate and looked towards the wall. With just one look, his heart sank. A person was curled up on the bed, sleeping soundly. After being woken up, he slowly sat up with sleepy eyes. It was Hu Yuanzhong. He was actually in the room. Shin Han asked the people in the room, "Did any of you see Hu Yuanzhong go out tonight?" No. Brother Hu's leg is injured, so he sleeps earlier than us every day. I didn't see him go out. He Yen looked towards Hong Shan. Hong Shan lightly shook his head at her. He really didn't go out. Shin Han stepped forward with an expressionless face. Take off your clothes. Hu Yuanzhong was confused, but when Shin Han didn't say anything, he seemed a bit scary. He hesitantly took off his clothes. When he took off his outer garment to his arm, he saw that there was no problem with his right shoulder except for a few small cuts caused by the shrubs. If that iron rod hit him, there would at least be a large bruise. But there was nothing on his right shoulder. It wasn't him. He Yen widened his eyes. Not only did he not relax, but his face became even uglier. This was an elimination. It was unknown what role Hu Yuanzhong played in this, but since there was no problem with him, it could only mean one thing. He wasn't just one person. There was a traitor in the Liangzhou guards. That was why this show was so perfect. Shinjiao, she said coldly. That person is probably in the Liangzhou guards right now. Hurry up and take people to investigate. I think the most suspicious person is you. A head instructor stared at her and said, earlier, you said that Hu Yuanzhong killed him and called us back to check on his injuries. Now that Hu Yuanzhong has been cleared of suspicion, you want to change to another person. What is your purpose in stalling for time like this? I'm not lying. He Yan frowned. As long as you investigate the entire Liangzhou guards, you will know that I'm not lying. Shut up. Shen Han shouted. The arguing stopped. He Yan looked towards Shen Han. Shin Jiao, you don't believe what I said? I only believe my own eyes. Shen Han said, come, take her to the dungeon. He Yan, you can lock me up, but you have to investigate the truth. Otherwise, the Liangzhou guards will be in big trouble. You're already like this and you're still cursing people. A head instructor said angrily, you're too arrogant. He Yan was taken away. The rest of the people in the room wanted to ask but didn't dare to. Xiao Mai and the others had cold expressions. Hu Yuanzhong asked curiously, Shin Jiao, what happened? Did someone die? Shin Han didn't say anything. He turned around and walked out of the room. The head instructors who followed him out had serious expressions. Liang Ping hesitated for a moment and asked Shin Han, head instructor, how do you plan to deal with He Yan? After all, he was a soldier under his command. Liang Ping didn't want to believe that He Yan had ulterior motives. However, there were witnesses and evidence. Even if he wanted to exonerate him, he couldn't find a reason. This is a serious matter. He Yan's identity is also not ordinary. Shin Han said in a low voice, lock him up first. We'll talk about it when the commander-in-chief comes back. Yes. The dungeon of the Liang province guards wasn't big, but it was dark and damp. Because it was winter, people would feel bone-chilling cold when they entered. There was no bed, so they could only sleep on the floor covered with straw. The quilt was also a thin layer of cloth. There were a few holes in it. It was unknown whether they were bitten by rats or something else. He Yan sat on the floor and looked around. There was no one else in this dungeon other than her. The lock of the dungeon was specially made. It wasn't as simple as the one in her and Xiao Ju's room. With one look, He Yan knew that she couldn't open it. After being reborn, she didn't even have the chance to show off her skills before she was sent to prison. She should have sighed and lamented, but at this moment, He Yan wasn't in the mood. She was now certain that there was a traitor in the Liang province guards. That traitor probably had his eyes on her for a long time. That was why he knew that she went to the martial arts training field every 3 nights. Because of this, it was easy to arrange for people to wait on the horse path and lead her up Mount Baiyue. Whether it was going up the mountain at night or killing the new soldiers, it was all to accuse her of conspiring against the law. As for why Ma Damei had said that they would go to such lengths to slander her, it was because He Yan had discovered the other party's identity as a member of the Chang tribe. She had originally suspected that the rash on Hu Yuanzhong's hand was related to his actions before and after. Later, when she met the masked man on Mount Baiyue, he held a scimitar. It was also a blade technique that the Chang soldiers used. She was 80% certain. Now that He Yan was in prison, there were still Chang people in the Liang province guards. This made her hair stand on end. Xiao Ju wasn't in the Liang province guards. The tens of thousands of new soldiers had never truly been on the battlefield. If they encountered the Chang people now, it would be like what she had encountered in Emo County. They would probably be completely wiped out. Since the other party had schemed so meticulously, they must be planning something big. If the news of the Yudo harassing the people in Zhangtai was false and they were trying to lure Xiao Ju away, then the Liang province guards were like fish on a chopping board, waiting to be slaughtered. Xiao Ju had already been gone for 20 days. Based on the fact that he had discovered that the information was false when he arrived in Zhangtai and rushed back overnight, it would take him another 10 days to reach the Liang province guards. Then the other party must have chosen to make a move within 10 days. They didn't have much time left. He Yan was still locked up in the dungeon, and no one believed her words. When Shinhan ordered people to take her to the dungeon, He Yan had thought of directly fighting them and breaking free of their control. However, if she did that, she wouldn't be the one to kill them. She would really be the one to kill them. She really didn't want to live with the crime of murder on her shoulders. Moreover, the new soldiers of the Liang province guards were all her companions. They stayed together every day. She didn't want to live alone and watch them die for nothing. She didn't know when this chess game had become a dead end. However, she had already quelled the chaos in Western Chang. The Chang soldiers had also suffered great losses in that battle. They wouldn't be able to make a comeback for at least 10 years. Why would they dare to take such a dangerous step? He Yan couldn't understand it either. At this moment, he suddenly heard a noisy voice from outside. "Let me in. I just want to say a few words. My father is the Vice Minister of Internal Servants," official song. "If anything happens, I'll take responsibility." It was Song Taotao's voice. He Yan was startled. Song Taotao usually came to give her pastries and candies every few days. He didn't expect her to know about what happened today. The guard outside said something again, and He Yan heard Song Taotao say unreasonably, "You want to try and stop me again? If you stop me again, I'll tell second young master Shao that you molested me when he comes back." Something fell to the ground with a clang. In the next moment, He Yan saw a pink dress fly in. Song Taotao said, "Big brother He." "Miss Song." He Yan smiled. Song Taotao threw herself in front of him and hurriedly stuffed 2 steamed buns into He Yan's hands through the bars. "It's too late. I brought you some leftovers from Dr. Shin's dinner. I heard my father say that people in prison don't have food to eat every day. I'm afraid I can't come every day, so I brought 2 for you first. Eat sparingly." Everyone in the Liang province guards thought of her as a murderous demon, but this little girl wasn't afraid of her at all. She was even afraid that she would starve. He Yan's heart was filled with gratitude. He said warmly, "Miss Song, you shouldn't have come." "Why shouldn't I come? I heard from them that you killed someone." "I didn't kill that person." Song Taotao nodded. "I guessed so. You're so kind-hearted. You're always willing to help when you see injustice. Why would you kill someone? You must have been plotted against." "Don't worry, I'll definitely get you out." He Yan didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "Miss Song, it's best if you don't get involved in this matter." However, this girl was very stubborn. "You're my savior. My father said that a drop of water should be repaid with a spring of water. Right now, the Liang province guards instructors are old-fashioned and stubborn. They won't listen to me. When second young master Shao comes back, I'll talk to him and see if he can help." He Yan thought, it'll probably be too late by the time Shao Ju comes back. He looked up at Song Taotao. The little girl's expression was very serious. He Yan wanted to laugh, but when he thought of the current situation, he couldn't. If the Chang tribe really came and Song Taotao fell into their hands, what would happen? He Yan shuddered. "Miss Song." After a while, she said, "Since you want to help me, I have a favor to ask of you." "What is it?" Song Taotao looked at her. He Yan sighed softly. "We can only treat a dead horse as a living one." In Shinhan's room, Cheng Lisu and Shinhan were confronting each other. "Young Master Cheng, please go back. Without the commander-in-chief's orders, this one doesn't dare to let He Yan out," Shinhan said helplessly. Cheng Lisu sat in front of his door, blocking the door to prevent him from leaving. He only said, "Shin Jiaodo, you have to believe me. Brother, he really can't be the murderer. Du Mao stood to the side and couldn't help but say, "Young master, everyone knows that you and He Yen are close friends. However, when we went up the mountain, there were witnesses and evidence. How can you deny it? Even if the commander-in-chief is here, he has to follow the rules. Besides, we haven't said that we'll immediately convict He Yen. Everything will have to wait for the commander-in-chief to come back and make a decision. But right now, Uncle isn't even in the Liang province guards." Qing Lisu shouted. "It's easy for you to say. Do you know how cold and dark that dungeon was? Brother, he was all alone in there. Do you know how scared he was?" Du Mao, Qing Lisu's words made it sound as if he had been in the dungeon himself and could empathize with him. Besides, it wasn't as if He Yen was all alone in there. With He Yan's temperament, he probably didn't take this matter to heart at all. Qing Lisu really didn't need to worry about him. Seeing Shen Han's firm attitude, Qing Lisu had no choice but to take a step back. He said, "It's fine if you don't want to let him out, but I have a condition." Shen Han asked, "Young master, what are your orders?" "The food in the dungeon is too shabby. My brother can't stand such hardships. I won't go overboard. Whatever my brother eats in the dungeon must be provided as usual. There are still 2 more weeks of winter. It's too cold. Give him 2 more blankets and hot water every day." "Young Master Cheng," Shen Han interrupted him. "This is against the rules. I can't do this and I can't do that. What exactly do you want?" At this point, Qing Lisu also became angry. He stood up and said loudly, "If you can't do it, then I'll go myself. I'm telling you, you'll regret treating my brother like this." After he finished speaking, he turned and ran away. The door was slammed shut with a bang. Shen Han couldn't help but feel a headache. A child of this age, especially a young master who was spoiled by his family, was really unbearable. Xiao Ju usually looked cold and harsh, but to be able to spend so much time with Qing Lisu every day, he could be considered very patient. The remaining instructors in the room all looked at Shen Han. Liang Ping asked, "Head instructor, what should we do now?" One person had died in the military camp. Although He Yen was now locked up, He Yan's words still caused waves in everyone's hearts. If there really was a spy in the Yangzhou guards, that person was still hiding among the new recruits and had killed one of their comrades without anyone noticing. It definitely wasn't for fun. Who was this person? Who was the master behind him? What was his purpose? When would he reveal himself? None of this was known. This person could be He Yen, or it could be someone else. If it was He Yen, then it would be easy to handle. If it was someone else, then it would be very bad. "Find someone to keep an eye on that Hu Yuanzhong," Shen Han muttered. If He Yan's words are true, then this person will definitely make a move. Ma Damei asked, "Has there been any letter from the commander-in-chief in the past few days?" Shen Han shook his head. His gaze was also covered in a layer of worry. There had been no news from Zhang Tai until now. In the past, this was very rare. Hopefully, nothing bad had happened. Qing Lisu ran out and bumped into someone. That person covered his forehead and said, "Io." He scolded, "Don't you look where you're going?" Qing Lisu took a closer look. It was Song Tao Tao. He had a stomach full of anger when he was with Shen Han. Now that he saw Song Tao Tao, he couldn't help but get angry. "Who told you to bump into me?" Song Tao Tao rolled her eyes at him. "I can't be bothered with you." She walked straight ahead. "Stop." Song Tao Tao turned her head and asked, "What are you doing? Are you going to find old Shen?" Qing Lisu pointed in the direction of Shen Han's house. Song Tao Tao turned around and said angrily, "Why? Can't I?" This time, Qing Lisu was excited. He took a few steps forward and said, "Are you pleading for my big brother?" Song Tao Tao glanced at him. Although she didn't like Qing Lisu's good-for-nothing attitude, she couldn't help but admit that this guy cared about He Yen quite a lot. Every few days, he would send food to He Yen. He Yan had a good relationship with him. She said, "So what if I am?" "Don't mention it." Qing Lisu waved his hand and looked depressed. "I just came out of old Shin's house. This person is very stubborn. I tried to persuade them, but they didn't believe that my big brother he didn't kill anyone. They also refused to send food and blankets to big brother he. Are you stupid?" Song Tao Tao expected better from him. "If they don't agree, can't you go yourself?" She glanced at Qing Lisu's dejected expression and said angrily, "I already went there and sent steamed buns to big brother he. You don't have to worry." "Really?" Qing Lisu's eyes lit up. He looked at Song Tao Tao. "I didn't expect you to be so loyal." Song Tao Tao sneered. "Thank you for thinking so highly of me, young Master Cheng." After she finished speaking, she continued to walk forward. Hey, hey, hey. Qing Lisu stopped her. "Why are you still going to find old Shen? I already said that this person is unreliable. It's better to rely on the two of us." Because of He Yan, these two people could now be called the two of us. If He Yan was here, he wouldn't dare to believe his ears. "I think so too. It's big brother he's fault for trusting him." Song Tao Tao said helplessly, "I was asked to do this by someone. It was big brother he who asked me to find Shinjiao." "Big brother asked you to go?" Qing Lisu was stunned. "Yes." Song Tao Tao walked around him. "So don't disturb me. I'm going to find someone first." After she finished speaking, she ignored Qing Lisu and walked forward. After taking 2 steps, she turned around and walked back to Qing Lisu's side. Song Tao Tao lowered her voice and whispered in his ear, "Big brother he also said that you must not walk around in the Liang province guard for the next few days. If a new soldier comes looking for you, don't go. It's best if you stay by Shinjiao's side at all times." "Old Shen." Qing Lisu frowned. "Why do I have to follow him? I don't even have enough time to annoy him. This is big brother he's instructions." Song Tao Tao's expression darkened. "You better listen to him." She thought of that youth standing in the dark dungeon and shoving something into her hands. He said worriedly, "I'm afraid there are traitors among the Liang province guard. When I'm not here, follow Shen Han and have him protect you. You must be careful." Chapter 110. He Yan had been in the dungeon for 2 days. In these 2 days, other than Shen Han who came once, no one else came. Even if Shen Han came, he didn't mention anything about the situation outside. She assumed that nothing had happened for the time being. The more this was the case, the more He Yan felt that something was wrong. Unfortunately, the dungeon of the Liang province guards was as solid as a rock. It was hard for her to think of a way to escape. Song Tao Tao and Qing Lisu were probably under surveillance. She hadn't seen them in these 2 days. To He Yan, eating and sleeping coarsely wasn't unbearable. As time passed, the most frightening thing was that the unseen danger was gradually approaching. Unfortunately, no one had noticed it yet. It began to snow in the middle of the night. The snowflakes were as big as goose feathers. They danced in the air and landed on people's bodies. Even their cotton clothes couldn't withstand the bone-piercing cold. 2 sentries stood on the balcony. They couldn't help but rub their hands together and blow air into their palms. Suddenly, a white mist fell in front of them and quickly dissipated. The Liang province guards were in a state of silence. The guard station in winter wasn't as lively as it was in summer. There were no new recruits who went to Wulu River to take a shower at night. There were also no noisy cicadas. There was only the cold of the snow melting on the ground. "I'm going to the latrine." One of the sentries stomped his feet. "I can't hold it in anymore." His companion urged him, "Go quickly and come back quickly." The man put down the drumstick, picked up a knife, and turned to go to the latrine. The snow was heavy. In just a moment, a thick layer of snow had accumulated. When he stepped on it, his shoes were submerged. The cold air climbed from his feet to his head. The sentries shivered from the cold and hurriedly ran to the latrine at the back. There were torches outside the latrine. A few days ago, a new recruit had woken up in the middle of the night to relieve himself. He didn't see the road clearly and slipped on the icy ground, injuring his leg. After that, Shinhan had people set up a fire here to illuminate the road. When the sentries entered, there was another person inside. He glanced at the person under the dim light and smiled. "Oh, you're up too." The other person smiled and replied, "I just got here. It's too cold. If it wasn't for the fact that I couldn't hold it in, I wouldn't have made this trip," the sentinel complained. After he was done, he pulled up his pants and was about to walk out. That person was also done and followed him out, one in front of the other. The torches at the door reflected a person's shadow in the snow, swaying back and forth. The sentry casually glanced and saw that the shadow behind him had unknowingly opened his arms. He was startled and was about to shout. With one hand covering his nose and mouth, the person behind him pulled out the knife at his waist and slashed it across the sentry's neck. Blood splattered all over the ground. The young man's body silently fell to the ground, no longer breathing. Without any hesitation, the black shadow bent down and dragged the sentry's corpse away. The snow was getting heavier and heavier. In just a moment, the bloodstains were covered. After the time it took for an incense stick to burn, the sentinel walked out again. He grabbed a handful of snow, wiped the blood off the knife, and put it back on his waist. He then tidied up the felt hat on his head and walked up the stairs. On the balcony, his companion was waiting impatiently when he suddenly heard movement. Seeing the sentry who had just gone to the toilet come back, he let out a sigh of relief and scolded, "Why were you gone for so long? Did you go to slack off?" The sentry shook his head, lowered his head and breathed into his mouth, as if he was too cold to speak. Seeing this, his companion couldn't help but rub his hands. "Mother, this is too cold." The sentry pulled his felt hat down very low. Seeing this, his companion scolded, "Do you think you won't be cold if you pull your hat down? If you pull it up, you won't even be able to see. How are you going to keep watch like this?" He reached out his hand to lift the sentry's hat, but the moment he got close, he suddenly froze. The sentry's clothes were different from the pure red and black of the recruits. At the collar, there was a layer of white border. Now, at the white border of the other party's collar, there were 2 red dots. These were not old ink stains. The color was bright and it was slowly becoming denser. A moment ago, when the other party went to the toilet, there wasn't any. His companion looked at the sentry who had not said a word since he came back. He was about to pull out his knife, but his movements were too slow. The other party actually had 2 knives. One knife, which belonged to the dead sentry, stabbed into his chest. The other knife, with a curved tip, slit open his throat. He couldn't yell out and staggered to the ground. The murderer had already turned and walked down the platform. The sentry crawled on the ground with difficulty, trying to pick up the drumstick that had fallen to the ground. As long as he could grab the drumstick and strike the whistle drum, all of the Liang province guards would wake up. This was the last thing he could do. Blood trailed down his body, a ghastly sight. He used all of his strength to crawl to the drumstick. Holding the drumstick, he wanted to raise his body to strike the drum. He had only raised half his body when suddenly, a wave of intense pain came. Blood splattered onto the drum, and the hand holding the drumstick also fell to the ground. His right hand had been chopped off. The murderer returned and stood in front of him, saying in a low voice, "I almost forgot." Not far away, the commotion here seemed to have startled the patrolling soldiers on the other side. Someone yelled, "Hello. Are you guys all right?" This person pressed down on his felt hat and waved his hand in the distance. "I'm fine. I just fell down." Blood was everywhere on the ground. The sentry who had been on the verge of death just now had his eyes wide open. He was completely dead. The night was like an abyss, closing in on all of the Liang province guards. The next morning, at dawn, the new soldiers got up to eat and went for a morning run at the practice field. Hong Shan and Xiao Mai sat together to eat. Not long after, Wang Ba, Huang Xiong, and Jiang Jiao also arrived. Huang Xiong asked, "He Yan hasn't been released yet?" Hong Shan shook his head. "This can't go on," Jiang Jiao said. "It's been unusually cold these days. I heard from young Master Cheng that there's nothing in the dungeon. Even if he doesn't freeze to death, he'll get sick." In the end, they were comrades who had fought for the flag together. Even though they had complained about He Yan because of the green hat incident, when it really came to this point, they weren't completely without worry. "Do you guys think He Yan will be released after the commander-in-chief returns?" Wang Ba asked. "It's hard to say," Shi Tu answered. "Why?" Wang Ba was curious. Right now, all of the Liang province guards know that He Yan killed people, but no one can find evidence that he didn't kill anyone. Hong Shan sighed. "What evidence does he need? He's not an idiot. He killed people but didn't bury them. Why would he purposely leave the corpses for others to use? This is the evidence." Xiao Mai whispered, "This is too far-fetched." Wang Ba glared. "How is it far-fetched? Tell me, how is it far-fetched?" As they spoke, a commotion suddenly came from outside, mixed with someone's cry of alarm. "Someone died. Someone died. Quick, go find the instructor." What? Everyone went out to take a look. They saw a short, quick-witted recruit anxiously saying, "The practice field, the brothers on sentry duty at the practice field are all dead." They were all dead. Everyone's expression changed. They all got up and rushed to the practice field. Inside the practice field, blood flowed like a river. No one knew when the snow had stopped. Some of the blood was buried by the snow, while some had frozen and landed on the practice field. The brutal acts of last night could be vaguely seen. There were dozens of sentries on the platform and around the practice field. Not a single one was left alive. The corpses were placed in the center of the practice field. They were piled up haphazardly, as if they were piling up food for pigs and sheep. The dead soldiers were all killed with a single slash. Their throats were slit. It was extremely tragic. One of the soldiers piled at the top had his right arm cut off neatly at the elbow. This person was wearing a sentinel's uniform. His right arm had been cut off when he wanted to beat the drum. They were all companions who spent day and night with each other. Their lives were taken just a wall away. For a moment, the eyes of everyone in the practice field turned red. Someone said hatefully, "Who did it? If I find out, I'll... Someone's voice sounded. It had a hint of oppressive arrogance. "What will you do?" No one knew when, but from behind the practice field, from the horse path connected to White Moon Mountain, a group of cavalry had arrived. There were about a few hundred people, and at most 1,000 people. The leader was a long-haired man. He was riding on a horse. He wore dark armor and held a scimitar that was half a person's height. His figure was extremely burly and muscular. His shoulders and back were very wide. His nose was very high, and his eyes were a deep blue like lake water. His appearance was different from the people of the Central Plains. When he smiled, he was like a vulture grinding its teeth. It had a sinister bloody aura that made people's hearts palpitate. "Who are you?" the recruits asked. The long-haired man ignored them. He only approached the recruit who had just spoken. "If you find out, what will you do?" His smile had a hint of cruelty and tyranny. The recruit could not help but tremble when he faced this person. He gathered his courage and said, I will definitely seek justice for my dead comrades." "Is that so?" The long-haired man laughed. "How will you seek justice?" Without waiting for the recruit to answer, he raised the scimitar in his hand and chopped down. Dong! A figure swept past and blocked his scimitar. However, The figure was knocked back a few steps by this attack. When he steadied himself, he looked at the long-haired man. Your Excellency is very bold. You killed people in the Yangzhou Guard. It was Shin Han. Shin Jiaodo, Chief Instructor Shin is here. The recruits shouted excitedly. They suddenly had a backbone. Chief Instructor. The long-haired man looked at Shin Han. You are the Chief Instructor of the Yangzhou Guard. Who are you? Shin Han's face was as calm as water. My name is Rida Muzi. I heard that the general of the Dewei family of generals, General Feng Yun, Xiao Huaijin, fought peacefully and was undefeated in hundreds of battles. I specially came to ask for advice. What's wrong? Xiao Huaijin doesn't dare to fight. What nonsense are you talking about? A recruit couldn't help but retort. You clearly know that the commander-in-chief isn't here. That's why you dare, shut up. Du Mao shouted to stop him, but it was too late. Not here. Rida Muzi's eyes narrowed. That's really unfortunate. The instructors looked at each other. Their hearts gradually sank. The so-called asking for advice from Xiao Zhu was nothing more than an excuse. This person probably already knew that Xiao Zhu wasn't in the Yangzhou Guard, so he brought people here to provoke them. However, there were only 1,000 people at most. Facing tens of thousands of Liangzhou soldiers, even if they were recruits who had never been on the battlefield, wasn't this a bit too arrogant? Or, was there another conspiracy? The sentries were all killed in one night. If it was an enemy, it was impossible for them to do this. Unless there really was a traitor and they died at the hands of their own people. Ma Damei said in a low voice, He Yan is telling the truth. He Yan was telling the truth. They had been watching Hu Yuanzhong these days, but Hu Yuanzhong had been well-behaved and hadn't made any strange movements. If he still had accomplices hiding among the recruits, everything made sense. Get into formation, Shin Han ordered. The tens of thousands of elite soldiers behind him all drew their weapons. Since the other party had come with ill intentions, the men of Dewei had no reason to retreat. Rida Muzi saw this and laughed loudly. He said, Hey, head instructor, I didn't come here to fight with you. You seem to be from the Chang tribe. Shin Han sneered. Many years ago, General Fei Hong and the Chang tribe fought. I thought that the Chang tribe no longer had any intentions of betrayal. Now that you've come to the Yangzhou Guard and killed dozens of my men, you can't be here to ask for peace, right? At the mention of General Fei Hong, Rida Muzi's expression changed slightly. After a while, he stared at Shin Han and said with a sinister smile, Head instructor, don't slander me. I only wanted to learn from Xiao Huaijin. Who knew that when I passed by this place last night, the sentries here were too unfriendly and got into an argument with my brothers. I had no choice but to kill them all. He said casually, I thought that Xiao Huaijin's soldiers were more or less capable. I didn't expect them to be so weak. When they died, they didn't even make a sound. You. The recruits were filled with righteous indignation. Head instructor, please don't be angry. I'm really only here to learn from each other. He looked at the recruits behind Shin Han with great interest. If Xiao Huaijin doesn't want to fight, then let his soldiers fight. If that doesn't work, then you instructors are fine too. Liang Ping took a step forward. You think too highly of yourself. Why are you so sure that we will fight? You don't want to. Rida Muzi clapped his hands calmly. A few people walked over from afar. One of them struggled and said, Let me go. Shin Han's expression suddenly changed. A few foreign soldiers carried 2 people like chickens. One of them was Qing Lisu, and the other was Song Tao Tao. Both of their hands and feet were tied behind their backs. They were in a sorry state and were struggling endlessly. Shin Jiaodo. When Qing Lisu saw Shin Han, it was as if she saw her savior. She shouted, Who are they? Why did they tie us up? Who were they? Shin Han felt bitter. He had already sent many people to guard Qing Lisu and Song Taotao's door to protect them secretly. However, they were still captured. The other party's strength was not to be underestimated. They knew how to capture Qing Lisu and Song Taotao to restrict the Liang province guards. It was obvious that they were very familiar with the Liang province guards. Now, Rida Musi looked at Shinhan's expression with satisfaction. Head instructor, are you still willing to learn from us? Song Taotao shouted, how can we learn from each other? Why would they be so kind? There must be a trap. Shinhan said, okay. Straightforward. Rida Musi sat up straight. The weather is too cold. I'm too lazy to fight too much. 3 matches. You can pick 3 people. He said to the people behind him, brothers, who is willing to go up? Go. Someone behind him said, Commander, Warlord is willing to fight. This was a very well-built man. The Chang people had always been physically strong. When compared to the people of the Central Plains, they looked especially thin and weak. He was not old, only in his early 20s. However, he was 9 feet tall, like an ancient giant. He also had a ferocious look. His eyes were slightly protruding like a bull's. He held a curved sword in his hand. At first glance, it was obvious that he was not someone to be trifled with. Good. Rida Musi shouted. Warlord is so brave. As expected of the Chang people. He then looked at Shinhan. What about you? The tiles were so strange and huge that anyone who looked at them would want to retreat. Moreover, the corpses on the training ground clearly showed how cruel the Chang people were. For a moment, no one in the Liang province guard responded. If no one is willing to fight, then your head instructor will do it. Rida Musi smiled. This kind of battlefield is a good time to teach the recruits. On the side, Liang Ping gritted his teeth. Just as he was about to fight, a voice rang out. Let me do it. This was a young recruit from the vanguard. His name was Wei Huan. Shinhan still remembered this person because his knife skills were outstanding. He was one of the best in the vanguard. However, his personality was very gentle and shy. He was not as outstanding as Lei Ho. Therefore, although he and Lei Ho were outstanding, they were far less eye-catching than Lei Ho. Right, speaking of Lei Ho, Shinhan was startled. Where was Lei Ho? You? Rida Musi glanced at Wei Huan and said with a fake smile, your courage is commendable. Wei Huan slowly walked forward until he was in front of Warlord. I am willing to spar with you. Warlord smiled. He looked around and saw the high platform of the training field. Let's do it there. The height is good. If I chop off your neck, the people below will be able to see it clearly. Isn't that good? Wei Huan's expression did not change. Warlord laughed loudly and leaped onto the high platform. Let's fight. In the past few days, there had been countless people on the high platform of the training field. However, they were all recruits of the Liang province guards. They sparred with each other. The recruits below the platform were in a relaxed mood. As they watched, they gave pointers. They could see the flaws and the brilliance of each battle. Every battle had something to gain. Because they also knew that there were many more such battles. None of them were as depressing as today. Rida Musi suddenly thought of something. She looked at Shinhan and said in a voice that everyone could hear, Head instructor, I forgot to tell you. The rules of the Chang tribe are that on the life and death arena, life and death do not matter. Only when one side dies can victory be determined. What? Liang Ping said angrily. Warriors must be prepared to die in battle at any time. This is the highest honor, Rida Musi said coldly. There are no exceptions. On the platform, Wei Huan slowly unsheathed the knife at his waist and nodded at Warlord. The dungeon was as dark and damp as ever. The guards at the door had disappeared at some point. The dungeon was so quiet that one could hear a pin drop. The sound of human footsteps was especially ear-piercing. The black shadow walked down the stairs step by step. The shadow of the torch at the door swayed slightly. In the innermost cell, someone was curled up into a ball, sleeping against the wall. She seemed to have caught a cold and was shivering, her lips pale. The black shadow stopped in front of He Yan's cell. There was an empty bowl on the ground. It was unclear whether it had been filled with water or rice. It had been licked clean and the bowl was shining. The thin blanket was very short and could not even cover her entire body. She was curled up into a ball and her feet were exposed. Her body was trembling slightly, and her face was abnormally pale. The black shadow looked at her for a moment, then reached out and inserted the key into the keyhole. With a click, the lock opened. The person in the cell was still unaware. He walked in. The young man's former high-spirited appearance was completely gone. This appearance was no different from any other prisoner. He seemed to be somewhat regretful, but also somewhat vigilant. He stood in place without moving, staring at the young man's face. The youth did not move. After a while, the black shadow slowly covered her. At this moment, the youth suddenly raised her head, revealing a pair of clear black and white eyes. There was not a hint of sleepiness, and she was very awake. He only had time to say one word. Before the knife in his hand could fall, he felt a pain in his lower body. He had been kicked right in the heart. The pain caused him to kneel on the ground. The next moment, white silk was wrapped around his neck. He Yan's voice came from behind him. "I've been waiting for you for a long time, Lei Ho." Lei Ho's eyes rolled back in his head, but He Yan's strength was great. His legs were pressed down on Lei Ho's legs, making him unable to move. Seeing that Lei Ho was about to be strangled to death by He Yan suddenly let go. Lei Ho suddenly had space to breathe. He clutched his neck and gasped for air. He saw He Yan walk in 2 or 3 steps in front of him. Like prying open a duck's mouth, He Yan poured something in his mouth. Lei Ho was panting with his mouth open. How could he defend himself against this? He immediately drank the thing without leaving a drop behind. He wanted to say something, but he could not muster the strength in his body. He only felt his whole body go numb. In just a moment, he fainted and did not move anymore. He Yan kicked Lei Ho's face twice. After confirming that this person did not move, he tore the white silk into 2 and tied up Lei Ho's hands and feet. That day, she had asked Song Tao Tao if she had any weapons on her. But Song Tao Tao was a girl. How could she carry a knife or a sword with her? She searched her entire body and only had a bottle of knockout drug. She had stolen it from Shinmushue's table. She thought that if she met a bad person, she could use it. He Yan was desperate and took it. This was not enough. She also borrowed Song Tao Tao's belt. Song Tao Tao's belt was bought in Liangzhou by Qi Wu after she returned to the guard station. The material was special. It was extremely sturdy and durable. It was comparable to rope. When necessary, the belt could also strangle someone to death. He Yan thought that since the other party deliberately framed her for murder and sent her to the Liangzhou guard's dungeon, it seemed that they were afraid of her. When she entered the dungeon, the other party would definitely not give up and would come to silence her. She had to carry a weapon on her at all times so that she could counterattack at any time. But all her weapons had been confiscated. She only had the bottle of knockout drug and Song Tao Tao's belt. This morning, no one came to deliver breakfast. This was very strange. Usually, breakfast would be delivered at this time. Because of Song Tao Tao and Cheng Li Su's pleas, although Shin Han did not allow Song Tao Tao and the others to visit her, he did not treat He Yan harshly. The guard station was usually very punctual. If no one came at this time, something must have happened. He Yan's heart was itching, but he could not go out. He did not know what was happening outside. Later, he gradually calmed down. Since something had happened, the other party might take advantage of the chaos to come here and kill him. Before Song Tao Tao left, she did not know what she could do to help, so she gave He Yen everything she had, including a box of cosmetic powder. He Yen smeared some on his face, then smeared some on his lips. He curled up into a ball, like a seriously ill prisoner who couldn't get up. Just as she was guessing what had happened outside, she heard footsteps, which led to the scene in front of her. He Yen dragged Lei Ho to a corner and lay down with his face facing the wall. The knockout drug would take effect for 16 hours. During this time, Lei Ho would not wake up. She left the cell, turned around, and locked the door. Lei Ho was now a prisoner. You're tuning into the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.